Good morning, Soraya. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
I'm doing well. So today we're going to be talking to a few of the members of Jupiter Effect.
Yes.
I'm pretty excited about this. We had one of the Jupiter Effect songs on, I think you picked it, when we had Ronnie on for
Yep.
the side projects for the 3 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's talk to Michael first. What do you think?
I love that idea.
Hi, this is Soraya.
And this is Jeff.
Our podcast is called Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
A podcast where the two of us play music that we like and share anecdotes and background about the tunes.
We hope you'll join our conversation. And without further ado, agruviar.
Let's get groovy.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Hey, Michael. It's me and Soraya.
Hi.
Hi, Soraya.
How you doing this morning?
I'm good. I'm good. Just waiting for your call.
Well, we're very excited to talk to you today. We have a few questions about Jupiter Effect.
No problem.
Awesome. So, for our listeners, if you haven't recognized the voice already, which you should, because we've had him on quite a few times, but on today's episode of Paisley Stage Raspberry and Ryan,
You should, just because it's like a weird voice.
It's
the beautiful melodic voice of the one and only Michael Quercio.
Absolutely.
Michael's not only the frontman of the 3 o'clock and Permanent Greenlight, but also Jupiter Affect, a band that is near and dear to Jeff and I's heart. Jupiter Affect released one EP, two full-length albums, and we are excited to have Michael back on to talk about Jupiter Affect. So welcome.
You know, when you said two full-length albums, I had to think for a second. Two? And then really? Yeah, there were two.
It's good that we're doing this then.
So maybe we can jog your memory about some of these and get some answers about some of them that we have questions for. But
Sure.
First of all, Michael, it's our understanding that Jupiter Effect was born out of Permanent Greenlight. Can you tell us how?
It was born out of after the departure of Matt Devine. There were a couple things kind of contractual, or I don't know what they were, contractual or what, where the record company, Chris and I made new recordings. Chris Bruckner and I kept playing together, meaning to start a new group, but the record company wanted to put out this new recordings we had done under the moniker of Permanent Greenlight. So that's kind of how there was a single released as Permanent Greenlight that really was sort of a very embryo Jupiter Effect kind of thing.
Okay.
That was a song called Together, and then the B-side was called You Are the Queen of Market Street.
Great single, by the way.
Yes.
Actually, that song Together got us actually signed to Polydor Records.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that single, that was before the single came out. They had heard it on a tape or something and flew us out to New York and had us do it was Bernard Yin, a guitarist that had taken that was still a three-piece, and they flew us out to New York and had us do like a, whatever you call it, show for them, the record company or Polydor or whatever. Then they signed us, but before we were able to record, the company went under or something. So.
Oh wow.
There was and so that never happened. Yeah, that's an interesting.
And Michael, I'm sorry. Continue.
I was going to say, and then that recording had 4 tunes or something. The other 2 tunes came out on a single in Spain under the same Permanent Greenlight name, but it was only out in Spain. So that's kind of collectory, kind of.
We'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that is interesting is when we look at the lineup of the band, over the lifespan of Jupiter Affect, you know, you and Chris Bruckner are the 2 constants. But guitar players have changed. And we're curious about that. Was that something, you know, kind of along the lines of we were looking to record new material and it was just that different people fit different needs, or how did that
when
come
we
about?
finally kind of got the new name and actually, with the, kind of free again from the constraints of, using the name or whatever. And like when we became Jupiter Effect, Dan Epstein and Jason Shapiro ended up being the guitar players. And that was a solid band. We put out the EP with like 4 or 5 songs on it, and then we did the instructions for. Then right after that, we got with Egbert Records to go in with Earl Mankey and do the instructions of the 2 Ways of Becoming Alice album. The instructions for the 2 Ways of Becoming Alice album, and then right as we were going to go in, Dan Epstein said, "Well, I'm going to leave the band," but he did all the recording with us. Okay. And so he came, I said, "Well, come on, just do we worked on these songs, just come in." So he came in and did the recordings, and we're glad he did. And then Jason, so that was the band there. So right after we finished that album, then we had to wait. We finished it in like September, but then had to wait until like January for it to come out. And in that time, Dan was gone. And so it was kind of me and Jason and Chris, and we got another fellow. By the time that album came out, we got another guy, John Kling, to play rhythm guitar. And so it's kind of like people just, so then after the Instructions album was out for a while, Jason, wanted to go and do his own thing. And it wasn't anything, it was just kind of like, kind of a revolving door, who anybody Chris and I wanted to keep it going. He wanted to do a second record, because Alice had gotten so many accolades and things, and so we had a kind of concept, and that's when we met. Who's really a kid? Now he's like a session player. He plays with all like the big stars. Brad Lindsay.
Uh-huh.
He's quite the. But at the time, he was just kind of fresh out of high school, and just I saw him. Somebody said, "Go see this guy play." And he was just amazing, and he was like, yeah, I'll play with you guys. So then that's when we started that version of the band, which had another friend of his come in and play keyboards, and then that's when we did the Genghis Khan album.
Oh,
and then after that, we pretty much just called it quits.
So, Michael, I had a question about the last single that Permanent Green Light did. You mentioned that was that Spanish Collector's record.
Yes.
That, by the way, took me forever to find a copy. So the B-side is Angela Davis Hair. The A-side is Hitler with Mascara. And then Jupiter Effect also released a version of Angela Davis Hair. And it sounds like...
we did more of a realized recording of it than... The single version is a very kind of almost acoustic kind of version. And then the one on the first EP is more of a kind of realize the drums and everything version. Got 2 different versions of the same song.
What side and comb her Angela Davis hair.
And it sounds like to me from what you're saying, even those last two quote unquote permanent green light singles really should have been Jupiter Effect.
Yeah. It really wasn't. The Permanent Green Light was really just me and Chris and Matt, and pretty much you squabble and you disagree when just pretty much you're kind of just banging your head against the wall. You're just really not rising up to a next level or anything, and just right thing at the wrong time, I guess.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about recording that debut EP that you guys did, the self-titled EP that came out in '98?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I think we did it at two different studios.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, some of the tracks were done at one studio, which is an engineer, and then one of the tracks was produced by Bill Inglot.
Oh, okay.
The track called Velocity.
Oh, yeah.
Which was produced by the famous Bill Inglot, a song we had, and we did that at a different studio. So it was kind of like a little collection of just recordings we had done here and there.
Oh, I
really
see.
wasn't, and it wasn't all done at the same time, meant to, kind of the stuff we had gone in and done and decided just to put out, just to have something out. And in that time I was writing, the stuff that would eventually be on the Alice LP.
A couple of years after the EP, Jupiter Epic releases the first full-length album, Instructions for the Two Ways of Becoming Alice, in 2000 on Egbert Records. The album was produced by Earl Mankey, who you worked with 3 O'Clock.
3 O'Clock, Permanent Green Light. Yeah.
You name it.
Yeah.
So, you've returned to working with Earl a number of times over the years, and also including the most recent 3x4 project where 3 O'Clock contributed 3 tracks covering Bangles, Dream Syndicate, and Rain Parade. What is it about Earl Mankey that keeps you coming back to work with him?
It's just kind of artistically and musically, it's just like home.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I'm completely like nobody I've ever worked with. I just click so much with Earl. It always feels right. I never walk out with something that doesn't, and I really I've never had that experience with other recordings I've done. He's just the guy for me. I don't know. I think, like the Beatles, were George Martin and
Right.
And Big Star were, the Ardent Studio or whatever. I'm just, thinking people that, there's just certain places a person goes and it just clicks. It just feels right.
So it sounds like you guys have a good chemistry together.
Yeah, chemistry, yeah.
In that relationship.
Yeah, so, and it's always fun and it's always something that I really like. So I just always love going back with Earl.
Excellent. And man, the work that you guys do together, all of the recordings that you've done with Earl, I think those are some of your finest things.
Yeah, I mean, like, Jet Fighter, You and I Are the Summertime. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean...
It's good shit, It's, a lot of that is Earl,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, the outcome speaks volumes to that relationship. Michael, I had another question, and honestly, I don't know too much about this song, but as I was preparing to talk to you this morning, I discovered that Jupiter Effect did a song called Suicide Samba for a compilation called Listen and Learn with Vibrophonic. I don't know anything about that song.
Yes.
Can you tell us?
That was something during when we were still playing with Bernard, and in the early when we first left playing with Matt. I can't even remember I'm trying to think where that was recorded. It might have been during those same sessions for the EP. It's stuff that maybe ended, maybe a very early thing that I can't remember where we did that, but it was just something we had maybe during the maybe we did that during the Queen of Market Street sessions, or I
Oh,
can't remember
okay.
where. But it is something we had, and then the opportunity came. They asked us if we wanted to put a song on that compilation. I think we just had that lying around
Oh,
and
okay.
put that on.
I've got to hunt that one down. That's one that I don't have yet.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so, Michael, I wanted to ask about the songwriting process for you. Was it any different writing songs for Jupiter Effect than it was for, say, writing for 3 O'Clock or Permanent Green Light?
I think for 3 O'Clock and a lot of Permanent Green Light, I was working with other songwriters, collaborating, kind of bouncing things off of guitar players and whatnot. For Alice, it was really I didn't have that. It was really just me, kind of just playing it for Jason and Dan, and them just kind of going off of it. Wasn't
So that wasn't so
it was really
collaborative?
kind of it was the first record I made since Salvation Army that was really kind of just, I wasn't really collaborating. I wasn't it was just kind of me alone.
Oh, okay.
It felt that way too, recording it, because during those sessions, Chris did we did the basic things where Chris did his drums, and then he went off to Europe, and then Dan did his stuff, and he was gone. Came in, did vocals, did guitars, and then was gone. And then Jason would come in and do his stuff. So it just kind of, a lot of it was just me and Earl sitting at the control board. And then when it was mixed, it was just me and Earl. I would come in. I just remember he really had the air conditioning. It was a summer, and he really had the air conditioning high, and so I would wrap myself in a blanket, and I remember to always be wrapped in a blanket, and going and mixing the songs,
Wow. Michael, I gotta say that the instructions for Becoming the Two Ways of Becoming Alice is some of your finest work. I absolutely love this album. There's so many great songs in there. It's really, really good stuff.
Yeah, it was, that was just that period of just writing songs and keeping them, kind of from maybe like a 2-year period of just keeping, doing material and getting it together, and then finally getting it together with Dan and Jason and going in and just finally recording them. And I wanted it to be kind of, some of it was power poppy, some of it was more psychedelic weird, and even one of the songs is like, jazzy.
Yeah.
So it was all just very eclectic.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I think is so appealing about Jupiter Affect is it's as if you're taking us on this musical walkthrough. You give us so many different genres and so many different performances between the albums, between the EP. I really like it. It's like you give us a little window into that musical head of yours, which there are a lot of influences and a lot of ideas floating around in there. And I think that's why these albums, each listen is a fresh listen.
I would agree. Yeah.
Well, I just I always want it to be something. I didn't want to kind of just make a record that was the same. I don't think really anything I've done, even the 3 O'Clock stuff or Mixing Tambourines, is all very eclectically weird, different than each other. And I just didn't want to. The records I like are kind of very varied, like the Beatles and stuff like that. Once you get to one particular period, it's not all kind of just, a lot of, especially at that period. And I guess now a lot of groups, they have their sound, and every song is kind of, I wouldn't say the same, but they're all just kind of, goes on one, just, you can have 12 songs and they're all like, and now here's my, Josely Rickenbach or guitar doing this, and and the drum, and it's all kind of like samey, for me. And a lot of people obviously like that, but I just want to, I get bored with that. So if you listen to those records, especially the Alice record, you'll see that it's all just very different.
Yeah, I totally agree. I gotta ask this question, Michael. And I'm gonna throw out a few names of a few songs. So you shout out a few people on different songs. So, for example, you use a lot of specific names in your songs. In White Knuckle Sound, the names Tony and Terry come out.
Tony and Terry made their mark, left the town that broke their hearts, making a vow to work quite hard at the longshoreman's yard. Their boss was angry and quite feared.
In Goodbye Arthur, Le Mort d'Arthur, you use the name Arthur.
Arthur sits by the telephone, waiting for the line. Had to say that he wants to leave, he means it more this time. Goodbye, Arthur, goodbye. You are the reason why I cry. Goodbye.
Michael and Mary, from the song of the same name.
Since Mary went away, there's nothing left to do or say. There's no one left to spend our time or to ease our mind, or to ease our minds. Since Michael rode ashore, there's no one left to keep us warm. There's nothing left worth
Drusilla, from Drusilla, I Dig Your Scene.
Drusilla, I dig your scene. And the way that you do it. Beauty was all that you need. Not a stop to lose it. I love the way you walk it. I love the way you talk it. Drusilla, I dig your scene.
I gotta ask, are these all people you know? Or are these just...
Tony and Terry were sisters, older sisters that on my street when I was a little kid. So I think that's where that came from. And Arthur was just kind of a name. It came into my head, and then the death of Le Mort d'Arthur, the death of Arthur, and
Michael and Mary?
Michael and Mary, just kind of like a border shore thing.
Okay.
I wanted to use a song with my own name in it, even though it's not about me, but just
Okay.
like that. And
Drusilla?
and then you mentioned Drusilla actually started out as Priscilla when it was a very, very at the very embryonic version of the song that I had, and I brought in and I showed Dan, the guitar player, Dan and the guys. And when I was singing it for them, first you play it for the guys, and just because you're singing it for them, and Dan's only comment was, Priscilla, why don't you name it after Caligula's sister, Drusilla?
Ah.
And I said, oh my God, yeah, that's a way better name. And I go, oh yeah, that's Caligula's sister. So that's how that came about. It was Drusilla, I Dig Your Scene. So it's great because when you work with people that are real funny and that, and
That's hilarious.
Give you great ideas. So and then from there I changed the lyrics around where it was more. You would kind of see more. It was kind of just it's supposed to be about Caligula and his sisters. So
That is hilarious.
that's one of my. I love. There's another Earl Mankey produced gem in my mind. It just has all those hallmarks, like Summertime and Jet Fighter and all those great little kind of singles. That one really stands out to me. Drusilla, I Dig Your Scene.
It's a great song.
Especially since it has this kind of. It also has it was kind of just based on almost like a. That riff is so common in so many boogie rock. I mean, it goes back even to the old Stones stuff, but initially I just thought of Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, originally it was like almost like I was thought of it as being a parody of Blue Oyster Cult or something, but it's just kind of turned into what it is, and it's neat. That's a neat one for me. I really like that one.
Blue Oyster Cult. Nice.
Blue
Nice.
Oyster
So, Michael, you mentioned that the band members changed after Alice, and in 2003, you released The Restoration of Culture After Genghis Khan on Orange Sky Records. And I have to mention this. The first time that I met you, where I actually got to speak with you, was at a Jupiter Effect show at Fay Dodo in Los Angeles as part of the International Pop Overthrow Festival. I had originally met you at a signing for 16 Tambourines and Encinitas at a place called Lose Records, but there was a bunch of us there just shuffling through a line, getting our 16 Tambourine copies signed. And then you guys did this show many years later, Jupiter Effect, as part of that IPO festival, and I remember the Last were also on the bill. I think by that time you had Brad and Eric in the lineup. So with that show and a show that you guys did in San Diego at the Adams Avenue Street Fair, those were the only times that I got to see Jupiter Effect live.
The Street Fair was the final Jupiter Effect show.
Wow.
And I don't even believe Eric played on that show. I think it was just me and Brad and Chris, and then our Ed, who played horns on that record. Ed actually goes back to Permanent Green Light, doing horn work for us. And I think that was,
wow.
we just did the Genghis Khan album in its entirety. That was the show. I think I remember that. And that was the final Jupiter Effect show.
Wow, that show was so good. I remember sitting there just stunned watching you guys. So was that Ed Keller?
Ed Keller, yeah, who goes back to playing. He played on the Permanent Green Light. Mary Ann gave up her hand and some other stuff. And then he's also on the Genghis Khan album, playing horns.
Very cool.
I especially liked the Genghis Khan blues theme, the opening track.
Soraya, remember we met Ed at one of our dinners.
Yes.
He was
yes,
there.
We did.
Yeah, that was very cool. So, Michael, did the live performances change when you had Brad and Eric in the band versus Dan and Jason?
It was a different thing, different styles. Again, it was having two guitars, like Dan and Jason, rather than Eric just played keyboards. It was kind of, switching it out like that, where there's only really one guitar. And you had two really, really competent lead guitarists in Jason Shapiro and Brad Lindsay.
Yeah.
That was always a hallmark of those two lineups, was just these real hotshot guys. Jason now plays with Red Cross.
Right.
But Jason goes back to a very stellar career of being in like one of the greatest LA bands, Celebrity Skin. I don't know if you've heard of.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, they're really just a very legendary LA band. So then Jason goes back to. Actually, Jason has a funny story. Jason grew up in Massachusetts, I guess the Boston area, and came out when he was a teenager, 16 or early. Like I guess he had got emancipated or something. He was in '82. He was at a Salvation Army show in San Francisco, where it was like me and Troy and Greg had gone up there with the Minutemen and Saccharine Trust, and it's very, right when we're about the time of the Salvation Army album, and Jason was like, oh yeah, I was at that show.
Wow.
So Jason goes. And then I met Jason when I was playing in a group called Imperial Butt Wizards, and Jason was doing Celebrity Skin, and we were doing shows together, and that's how I originally met Jason. Was always just enamored with his amazing guitar playing and that. So it came time to kind of setting up the New Jupiter Effect thing. We definitely kind of hit him up to see if he'd want it, and luckily he wasn't really doing anything at that time, so we got to And then again, Brad. So you really had those two kind of hotshot guitar players in both those
Versions of
versions.
it. Yeah.
And as for the Genghis Khan is, it was so yeah, it was a different kind of thing, but still kind of the same. So, but both I liked them both. Unfortunately, we had a very, very limited budget with the Genghis Khan, so we really just kind of did that almost on our own.
Oh.
It wasn't done with Earl. We would have rather had gone in with Earl, but doing the finances and stuff, we just couldn't make it work. So, but we kind of wanted to do it, so that's why so I don't know if we were too happy with the way that one came out. It was less polished than we felt Alice was, but people like it. I get some people say, well, it's my favorite record of yours. So I'm like, you never know what people are going to like.
So was that limited budget what prompted the change to the for the producer to work with Matt Wignall versus Earl?
Yeah. Matt Wignall was just kind of a guy in Long Beach that had a studio in the back of his home, kind of like a guest house, and he was friends with Brad, and then it was done really, really on a shoestring. Can't remember, but with it almost nothing, and
right.
That's there was just really no funding for that other than so that's how we did that.
So did that switch in producers? Did you feel that what was the effect that you think it had on the sound of the band? Because some people, I'm one of those people, I like Genghis Khan a lot, and on a previous show I used Genghis Khan blues theme. I highlighted that song because that song is just, there's so much going on in that song. I absolutely love it. But do you think it was a true reflection of Jupiter Affect at that time? Even with
I think it was. It kind of was. What it was. I'm very partial to Earl and his kind of way of doing things and his sonic fingerprint on stuff. And Alice is very different. It doesn't have his sonic fingerprint, which to me is it's. And at the time, I was like, well, okay, this is this doesn't feel like something I've done in the past or whatever. But now looking back on it, yeah, I think I really love I really like it. I especially like stuff like "You Are Wise in Your Conceit, O Beautiful Woman of the Tartars."
Wise in your conceit, oh beautiful woman of the Tartars, as you fall too deep, oh wonderful lady of the farmers. Repeat, oh repeat after me. No return, oh wonderful person of the fable.
So you never know. It's just my personal taste is maybe different. I think you talk to any band and they'll talk about what they like and don't like about certain records they've made or whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's really, I guess, for people to decide. I'm gonna be weird about anything I do. At a certain point. And,
so Michael, talking
for
about
a long time I couldn't listen. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, talking about good songs from the Genghis Khan album, and you had mentioned Blue Oyster Cult as an influence on Drusilla. I wanted to ask about one of the songs from Genghis Khan, and that's "Hymn of the Steppes," which is a crazy prog type number, and I think it's like in 7. It's got a weird time signature, and at the beginning, Chris does this crazy drum intro. What was the influence for Hymn of the Steppes?
I think that started out with Chris just fooling around on the drums, and doing that beat.
It's a crazy beat.
And so that was just kind of that crazy beat, and so we just kind of built a song around that crazy beat.
Wow.
And that's how Hymn of the Steps kind of came out. I believe the catalyst of that was Chris's beat.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if it was like an
Yeah, that's
Emerson, Lake and
a, that's a wild one.
It
Yeah,
is
that's a
very wild.
one.
It is.
Well, you know, Michael Quercio does not like prog at all. He doesn't like prog rock at all.
The other real prog one is I'd have to have the record in front of me. It's on side one, or it's one of the first songs. Living in Felt Tents.
Taking it on the run, taking it to the sun, taking it to the sky, taking it where you lie. Free life, free life, and he takes you to the moon, rising high above all this world for a while, but back too soon, taken where there's no more meaning, the leader of all tribes, living life, but that's all right. The leader of all tribes, living life. Taking it to the sun, taking it on the run, taking it to
Okay, Michael, Jeff may have cut you off, but I want you to finish the question. You said for a long time I couldn't listen to. What album were you referring to?
Oh, I mean, anything. I mean, I go back to like Row Cow Down 16 Tambourines. I just hear all the mistakes. So, you know, that's what it's like when 18, 19. I go, I was very weird about anything I've done. You know, when you do something initially, and with me, I'm a very anxious, kind of paranoid person. So I just always find fault, especially in stuff that I do. You know, I'm my worst critic by far. And so I'm a very dangerous, you know, critic for myself. Almost like you just kind of just you do it and then just let other people decide, because you know you just drive yourself crazy. You know,
And I think
you don't like your own stuff.
right. And I think that's one of the interesting things, because I know within our circle, Jeff and I's circle of friends, when we talk about Jupiter Affect, so many different people point to different songs and how much love there really is for this band. So, you know, yes, if you're leaving it up to the fans, we love it. We love it, and we do not hear what you hear, but we love it. Michael, okay, so we've walked through these albums, the change in producer, and also, you know, the change in guitar players, and we have to ask, so what precipitates, what leads up to Jupiter Affect no longer recording or performing together? How does this?
I think just kind of like I said, it just saying that everybody just kind of wanting to go on and do something else. It just, you know, wasn't really. We weren't really going anywhere. You know, wasn't really moving on to a next step or something. And Chris was moving up north to San Francisco, and at that time, and I think the other guys were on to doing other things, and I was just kind of tired of, you know, I think I wanted to go on a hiatus. I was just a little tired of playing,
Okay.
you know, of just doing music at all. And so all those things kind of came together, and it was just.
So it sounds like a pretty natural way for it to come to an end.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you and Chris weren't like pulling each other's hair.
No. It wasn't anything like we hated each other. It was just everything was very amicable, and
Yeah.
and so we're all still friends. We're all great friends. It just you know, had run its course.
Well, in those 5 or 6 or 7 years or whatever that the band existed, you guys have a great catalog between the EP and the 2 LPs. There's some great material in there. And I have to ask, Michael, out of the band's catalog, do you have a couple favorite songs that you did with Jupiter Effect? that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, like I said, I think that Drusilla, I did your scene, and Genghis Khan Blues theme, I'm really, really proud of, and probably other ones. Those two stick out to me right now, you know.
What about from your other bands, the 3 O'Clock and Permanent Greenlight? Do you have favorites from those
Oh,
bands?
gosh, 3 O'Clock, I really like Jet Fighter. I really like Stupid Einstein from 3 O'Clock.
So good.
From Green Light, You and I, the Summertime, Portmanteau. That period I really liked of the stuff I put out. I really liked the Hallucinations comp that came out about a year ago. That's really fun, a fun thing. Paul K, Goddess Bunny, stuff like that I really like.
And
I know, you'd have to catch me. It changes every day, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of Permanent Greenlight, real quick, like on the band's social media page, it looks like there may be pictures of you guys doing some new demos. Is that right?
Well, stay tuned.
Okay.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Stay tuned for more. So, you never know. We might surprise you.
Fair enough.
Oh, I like that. He's teasing something. I like it. I like it. Michael, I want to ask a question that I know is in Jeff's head and mine. Are there any Jupiter Affect tracks that maybe didn't make it onto albums that are kind of lingering around? Jeff and I always like to know about hidden treasures that may or may not one day see the light of day.
There's one tune that maybe, I think that is back from the early period of Jupiter Effect with Dan and Jason, that no one's ever heard. That's very Salvation Army. I think that it's on a tape. It's on like a master tape. So maybe somehow that'll come out on something. You know, maybe put it on a compilation with other groups there. It's a good one. So that's pretty much the only one no one's ever heard. But
Would you be willing to share the title?
it's called There Was a Time,
Okay.
and I think that's the only thing that nobody's really ever heard.
Wow.
Jeff, we need to hear this at some point.
Okay.
I-
I see. I like how we made the request and he said, "Okay, we want to, we like to hear it." But oh my gosh, I'm just okay. Now I'm very curious. I want to know, and I know our listeners would like to know too, Michael. Out of the bands that you've played with and fronted, is there any that you feel really most captured who you are as an artist, or do they all do that, you know, just kind of based on where you are at that time?
I think they, to an extent, capture me in a certain period of my life, and I think what really captures me is kind of really who I am, bare bones alone, is the instructions for the 2 Ways of Becoming Alice. I think that's really almost, for me, almost like a solo album. The fact that I kind of just took like real complete control of everything, you know, that I hadn't really done since Salvation Army, and I think that record, I'm very proud of that one. But I love them all for different reasons.
And Alice is a great album.
Oh my
so
gosh, yeah.
now it puts it in a very different light for me.
Yeah,
hearing.
same for me, yeah. All right, Michael, we wanted to thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you, guys.
Talking about this band. I am, especially the Alice record, I just love the music that you put out as Jupiter Effect, and I feel so fortunate that I was able to see those couple shows that I was able to attend. Yeah, it's such a great band, and hopefully There Was a Time we'll get to see the light of day sometime, and
Yes.
and I'm hanging tight to these Permanent Greenlight demoing new songs perhaps, and who knows what will happen. But thanks again for coming on and answering a few of our questions about this great band.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Michael. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye bye, Michael.
Bye-bye.
So that was pretty
Look.
cool.
I'm just going to say this right here, right now. Jupiter Affect is a great band, and if you've never listened to these albums, you need to. And now, listening to Michael say what he said about I always screw up the title.
Yeah.
The instructors for the 2 Ways of Becoming Alice. I always like invert the order.
Yeah, it's not easy.
But now, when he says Alice is almost like a solo album, simply because I set the pace. I took the control of it, and it was really a reflection of what I wanted to see in these tracks. It gives me a different vision now.
Yeah.
You need to hear that album. You need to hear Genghis Khan. It's a different sound. You know, if you think about his trajectory, right? He goes from Salvation Army. What was he, 17, 18?
Yeah, I don't even think he was
Just a
18.
kid.
Yeah, yeah.
And then from that he goes from punk into Paisley Underground, this neo-psych with 3 o'clock. From the 3 o'clock evolves into, he goes Permanent Green Light, which is much more rock sounding, but also just kind of opening different artistic doors. And then we get to Jupiter Affect, which is like, what do you say, Blue Oyster Cult,
Yeah.
jazz,
Yeah.
rock, and then like with some melodic soul in there. I mean, there is everything. And then he goes, from that into so many different projects, because then we also have to talk about, and we didn't even mention it, his time with Game Theory, his time with the Imperial Butt Wizards, he's done other things.
Yeah.
There's so many dimensions to him artistically.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated every time I talk with Michael.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And I have to say that I think that Alice is probably one of the finer records that he's been involved in out of all of, and I love all of them. It's definitely in the top 3, I would say, of stuff that he's put out. That album is so good. None of these releases are really easy to find. Genghis Khan is the only one that came out on vinyl. The other 2 you could find on CD. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck finding it. Fortunately, you could find some of these songs on YouTube, I noticed. So
Yeah.
Not all of them. I think all of Genghis Khan is up on YouTube, so you can hear the songs there. But I recommend you putting them on your wish list for Discogs or eBay and keeping your eye open, because these are some really great releases. And I'm curious, I want to talk to Chris and Jason and hear about their perspectives being in Jupiter Effect.
100%. And I hope that we'll be able to get them in and get their perspectives. Just a FYI, I know it's horrible for some, but iTunes does have the restoration of culture after Genghis Khan.
Nice.
So it is available for download or stream.
Perfect.
But Alice is the one that I think is the harder to find a physical copy of, but it's the one that is the most, I mean, it's such a strong album. Genghis Khan is a favorite of mine, but Alice is number 1.
Yeah.
And so, we should say, of all the Jupiter Affect fans out there, John DiOrio, our friend John, is, if we ever wanted a reunion show, he would be right next to you, front and center at the stage. But,
yeah.
And there's a track we've never heard.
I'm so glad you asked that question.
There was a time.
Yes.
And I hope there will be a time where we'll hear that.
Yes, you and I both.
And if you didn't do it already, I'm calling dibs on Sonic Fingerprint for my band name, because when he said that about Earl, I'm like, that's so poetic, Sonic.
Nice.
Anyways.
Nice. Very cool.
All right, so let's hear what Chris and Jason have to say. Maybe he only responds if we speak in French.
It's gonna be a short interview.
Où êtes-vous, Chris Bruckner? Où êtes-vous?
Arrêtez.
Je n'ai pas arrête. Je n'arrête pas.
I'm afraid you're gonna know more. I have to get my wife on to do it.
How you doing, Chris?
Good. How are you?
We're good. We are way excited to talk to you. It's been too long, my friend.
Yes.
Too long.
Oh, I'm excited too.
All right, Jeff. So, first of all, let's just bumper this. Who are we speaking with?
Today we're speaking with Chris Bruckner, the drummer, not only for Permanent Green Light, but today we're talking about Jupiter Effect.
Hello.
How did I do on my first one?
That was awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That was great. Okay.
You're
It
a
was.
professional.
Yeah.
Through and through. Chris, we want to welcome you back to Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme, and agreeing to return to the show and talk with us a little bit about Jupiter Affect. We just have a few questions, and we want to start off with this one. Could you tell us and our listeners how it was for you being a part of this band? We have spoken with Michael, and we're understanding the evolution from Permanent Greenlight into Jupiter Affect. So we'd love to hear your impressions of being a part of Jupiter Affect.
Oh boy. Well, that's rather broad. I mean, I loved it. It was some of the best moments I had playing with Michael. It was, I would say, one of the funnest times. I don't know really why that is. Maybe the scene was more interesting. Maybe I really loved the album we did, Alice. That was one of my favorites.
That is one of my favorites too. Of anything that Michael's done, I think that album was really good.
Oh, I'm glad.
Was it different playing with Jupiter Affect because of the guitar player? So how was it different playing with Jason and Dan at first rather than Matt and then eventually with Brad? How did that differ?
You know, it's hard to put your finger on it, but it is quite different playing with any person has their own kind of like fingerprint that they bring, and it's hard to quantify. I think it's more about feelings and things like that. So it was different. We added two people. That was one thing, and a quartet is definitely different than a trio. So that right there was different, and also they're just vastly different players in the way they approach things, and I think the way we approached learning songs became different somehow. It just became a lot different. I think Matt, we just played today. We just practiced, and so I'm fresh off of that. And Matt is very methodical, and that kind of helps with certain things. And I think that when that was gone, then there was other dynamics had to come into play to create to create the songs that we did.
So would you say that Dan and Jason were a little bit more looser than, say, Matt was? You said Matt was methodical, or is methodical in his playing. Was it looser with those guys?
I would say, you could say that, but it would almost be, well, I could speak for me. I was tremendously less prepared with Jupiter Effect, and I'm saying that as a good thing, because we would show. Michael and I were just talking about this, oddly. There was, I think, one or two songs that we just showed up, and I didn't know my part. And Michael reminded me that I got the part done at the studio.
Oh, wow.
And so it was. I think that's some of my best work. I have to kind of get out of. I don't know. There's a point at which it becomes too methodical for me. Not in the sense that Matt is doing. Matt likes to do things methodical in the sense of arranging. But if I get methodical in the way I try to play, then it seems like the God of the universe that doesn't speak to me at all. And so it's not as good if I try that. It's hard to describe. I play live like that. I'm the kind. I don't know. You probably both of you have seen play at this point, right?
Yes.
So I think if I was going to be honest about my playing, I don't have I'm not a drummer that's very consistent. I have off nights, and I think I have off nights because I'm willing to risk not playing well just to feel it in the moment. And so, with that, I want to feel it in the moment, but I'm risking a lot because I have off nights. And there are drummers that definitely don't have off nights, and I've seen people play that don't have off nights. They're good all the time. I don't think I really approach that.
I can see that. Because I think Jeff and I have both seen you where you feed off of the energy that's being fed to you, from the guitar player, from the bass, and you can just go off on a tangent. We've seen you. You're the madman behind the kit there.
Well, thank you. Yeah, when it's a good night, I'm actually happy with my playing. So I can be very happy with my playing. It doesn't feel like it's very consistent. I'm not interested in really being consistent. It doesn't, because then bad or good, you're just kind of what you are. You're just up there doing it. I would rather see what happens in the moment, and maybe something beautiful happens. That's a possibility. Anyway.
Chris, I want to take this question a little bit into a different direction. It was really interesting for Jeff and I to speak with Michael, and in talking about Alice, which I think we're all in agreement. Alice is really a special album. And one of the things that Michael talked about was how the vision for Alice and what came out was really moved along and helped by the presence of Earl Mankey. And we wanted to ask you about your own experience working with Earl. We know how much Michael appreciates him, but what was it like for you to work with Earl Mankey?
Oh, I love him. Not only is an amazing producer, but he's a charming man to work with. There's, I hear all these horror stories about, some of the best albums being made by some of the groups that I like, and you hear behind the scenes, like, how horrifying it was to do it. And, maybe there's a place for that, too, that, like, cracking the whip thing. But Earl is a charming man to work with. There's an ease and an elegance that happens when you're with him, and I think that's part of it, like, things that might take forever or just amazing amounts of discipline to kind of get, he seems to do this elegantly and without effort. And so I think he's one of the greats.
And did you find that his production style and your playing style, which you've already mentioned, is you don't like to be predictable, you like to kind of go in the direction that you think you need to go at the time, or where maybe your passion or your feeling is taking you. Did you find that there was synergy there with the way that Earl produces and the way that you play?
Well, not in the beginning. I mean, maybe I was too lax when I first was with him. I mean, he would point out things that I didn't really notice. And he'd say, okay, you notice here that, like, it's a little uneven, and I wouldn't even really, notice. But with his trained ear, he was pointing things out. And when I first heard it, I was like, no, you're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. And then he'd play it back for me and point it out, and I'd say, oh, yeah, of course, you're right. In the beginning, he was, used to working. He was, an engineer with the Beach Boys. He worked with, like, Hal Blaine.
Right.
So, he was working with the best studio musicians, there were, and so the consistency, again, was probably right on. Studio time back then is expensive, production time is expensive, and they hire the best so they get it quickly. Like, I wasn't interested whether it happened quick or not. It was, I just wanted to go there and have a good time.
Right.
So, I think I benefited from Earl's kind of, I do benefit from some structure, because I can go off on a tangent, as you said.
So, Chris, I wanted to narrow in on one specific song, and when we were talking to Michael, he was telling us about the origins of Hymn of the Steps, which was a standout track for me. The timing of it is crazy. I think it's like in 7/4 or something. But he told us when the song was written, it started off with your drum part, and I know that intro is your crazy drum fill intro, which I love, by the way. Do you recall that song coming together?
Yeah, I actually do. It was based on a riff that I was just messing around with at practice. And I think it came... See, when you're only the drummer, you're kind of around musicians. When you're around musicians that are good, like Michael can sit behind the kit and pound out something that sounds reasonably good. He could even do a fairly good impression of the way I play the drums. So he did that, and then Brad at the time. So you're talking about Genghis Khan.
Right.
And so Brad was there, and Brad can pound out a beat as well, too. And, they both kind of sat behind the kit one night, and they were like, well, let's do this. And I think somebody was asking, I don't know if it was John, or at the time we were playing with John Kling, and was asking, like, kind of, just half jokingly, like, what do we need a drummer for? Because, like, everybody can pretty much play. And so I go, okay, I'm going to sit behind the drums and pound out something that they can't play, because they're not drummers in the final. So I came up with something so bizarre that I'm like, okay, try to match that. And so like that's what that was trying to do, was trying to come up with something that they couldn't play, which is not hard because they're not drummers, but like I wanted to make it so bizarre that it would be difficult for a non-drummer to play it.
Wow, job security.
It's a revenge film. I like
Right. I didn't want to be like obsolete in the band.
Well, it's a great part, and you could tell that's the backbone of the song right there.
Thank you. Michael actually gave me writing credit on that. He's like, yeah, this is a drum song.
Absolutely.
Said and done. Said and done.
Thank you.
And Chris, I like to listen to you talk about your own musical style and your feats, your artistic feats, because there's a sense of, I call it false modesty. You're so good, and you don't even like to talk about it. And one of the things that is really interesting for me as a fan is to know that there was a point where you just, you put the sticks away, and you went on to pursue different things. And then there's been moments of time where you've cycled back and played again. And one of the things that Jeff and I learned in talking with Michael is that Jupiter Affect essentially came to an end when it was clear that the members simply wanted to go on and do different things. And we wanted to ask you about when you stepped away from the band. Did you move away? What were things that occupied your time or that made that step, that filled in that step?
Well, I recall correctly, I moved. I moved out of town, and I think the reason I moved out of town, I was just so bored with it down here, and I felt kind of stagnated in every sense of the word. Like the band, it was great, but I think I'd been in a band since I was 15, on and off. Maybe 13, because we practiced, I know, for 2 or 3 years, and then I played with a band called the Marsupial, and we had the one record out. But I'd been in a band since I was very young, and we never really made national news in any of the bands I played in, and so when you're looking to actually either get a career somewhere else or be in a band, it has to go one way or another. And so through all that time, till I was 30 something, mid 30s, I'd been in a band, and I didn't want to leave the band, but I did want to leave Southern California, and my wife and I moved to San Francisco. So I think that's what it was. It had nothing to do with, I think if I had stayed, I would have stayed in the band, but I didn't feel really, real spontaneity and any creativity, and I was kind of tired of the drums a little bit. So that's what led me to it. I really wanted to leave the area, and that's what I recall about it.
It sounds to us like it was just a natural ending to the band, and it sounded like everybody was ready to go in different directions in their lives, period. So it sounded like just
I think so.
like it was just time to wrap it up.
I think so. I think I was just kind of like the catalyst that did it. I don't think. I mean, they could have easily gotten somebody and kept going, but I guess it felt right for everybody.
Right, right.
Right.
So that makes sense. Well, Chris, before we let you go, we have two more questions. And one question that I wanted to ask you, we asked Michael the same thing. In the band's catalog for Jupiter Effect, do you have a favorite song or two that you're most proud of?
That's a tough one. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with every one of them. You know, because when it's your own, it's you know, you can always hear, you know, your imperfections. I guess the one that, you know, what makes me smile every time I hear it is probably Inside on Alice.
Oh, okay.
Which is, it's a really weird, I mean, it doesn't sound so weird because Michael is so damn seamless at making the weird almost sound commonplace. But it starts off in 3/4 time, which I'm fairly familiar with. But during the solo parts, it goes to 5/4 time.
It's an Indian summer today, with the universe looking our way, and the love that you seek is the love you'll find when the truth that you need's from inside. Head for the door as you go.
That's an odd time. That's a very odd time to be playing in a rock and roll song. The only reason I knew really how to do that was because I grew up listening to Dave Brubeck.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, it was because of my mom. My mom was a jazz fan, so I grew up listening to like Dave Brubeck and Take Five, obviously from his Time Out album, is in 5/4 time. And because I told Michael, I was like, okay, we're doing a song in 3/4, and he didn't know it was in 3/4 because he just writes. He doesn't really care, but he just writes, and so it's in 3/4 time. And I said, well, why? Okay, this is all good, but why don't we do the mid section in 5/4 time and make it really weird? But I'll bet most people don't really notice that. Like they're not necessarily, unless they're mathematicians or something, going to think about, okay, there's a time change in the middle, but there is a time change.
Wow. I'm going to have to go back and listen to that song now, because when we were talking earlier about Hymn of the Steps, I noticed that timing was really bizarre, so I started counting it out. I'm like, I think this is 7/4, and I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6. Yeah.
It's something like that, right? I don't know either.
I don't know either. So. But now I'm going to have to go back and listen to Inside now and figure that one out, because I didn't notice the time change like you said.
So the intro is 5/4 as well. So we put the intro in 5/4 as well, and then it moves to the verse and the choruses, which are 3/4, and then it goes back to 5/4 in the middle solo section.
So we're boring Soraya to death with this time signature talk.
No, you know, it's so funny that Chris mentioned the knowledge of Dave Brubeck, because as you're talking about this changing of the timing, which I'm no musician, I don't know how to read music, I just listen and say, yeah, that's great, it's got a good beat, I can dance to it. But I can see that improv style, or at least that impact of, you know, your foundation coming through, because that alteration of timing of the arrangement is just, to me, it's intriguing now, because now I'm gonna try, keyword here is try, to listen and hear that, you know, count out 1, 2, 3, 4, you know.
Well, you'll be able to hear it if you count it out, of course, but if you just feel it, you will feel a difference between the parts.
Got it.
Like there's just a feeling that it'll invoke, and really that's all you're going for, because how much of the audience really is counting this stuff out? I mean, it's not really important.
Probably just...
You know, there's got to be someone that is.
Yeah, just me and Matt Devine, probably.
Yeah, it's just doing it.
Meanwhile, I'm just like, hey, man, this is awesome.
That's the best.
All right, Chris. I got to ask you.
Yeah.
Because you've done different things that, you know, you've contributed different styles and different influences on. When people look back at the legacy of Jupiter Affect, which people really, it's a band that people really hold near and dear to their hearts. What do you hope they think of when they think of that legacy?
Oh, and geez, that's a tough one. Well, I would say I hope they don't think too much of anything. I would hope they feel something. I would hope they would feel kind of the essence. When I think back at Jupiter Effect, I get a feeling of fun. And so if that comes through somehow, that they would feel like there's a joviality to it. I mean, if you listen to there's some serious stuff like Inside that's kind of serious, but if you listen to the rest of it, Drusilla.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of just a fun song, and so I think it could come out. Jason was an amazing person to be around. He's honestly one of the funniest people I know. We laughed. We had a whole rehearsals where I don't think we rehearsed because we were laughing so much.
Oh my gosh.
We just wasted so much time on it. It was great. It was so fun. We almost preferred that, and I never had that. It was one of the more unproductive times from that point of view because we kept on giggling. But on the other hand, I think it fueled some creativity.
Excellent. Well, we're going to be talking to him next. Is there any questions that you have in mind that we should ask Jason?
That's a good one. Well, just ask him about some of the antics that prevented him from coming to practice some of the times. I'm not going to tell you what those are. I don't even know what me bantering them about. But there were some. He would miss a practice very occasionally, but not regularly. But like when he missed practice, there was a great story always attached.
Excellent.
Really, really good story. Just ask for any one of them, and you'll be very happy you did.
Done.
I love it.
Said
I love it.
And done.
And let me know what he says because I want to know what happens.
Excellent. I love that. All right, Chris, one more before we let you go. So you mentioned that you just got back from rehearsal with Permanent Greenlight, and as we know, you've been playing together. You guys put out the Hallucinations record, and you've done, 2 live shows over the last, 12, 15 months, something like that? A couple shows in there.
Yeah.
So these rehearsals, are you working on a new album, planning for a new show, or just getting together and hanging out?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to go into detail with anything. I will tell you that I feel like the creativity is being revisited. So I feel like we can get together and kind of be creative a bit, but I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to really talk about the entire. We don't really. Okay, to be honest, we don't really have a plan, and we don't really have anything set in stone. But we do like getting together.
Fair enough.
We'll keep you posted. Absolutely.
And we will keep our eyes open and our ears open, and we'll be following you guys to see what we've got coming down the pike. Well, I'm just glad that you guys are all getting together again. This is great news.
Well, thank you. I'm glad someone's interested.
We're very interested.
And if you guys want to throw in a Jupiter Affect get together, we're all for it.
Well, when you talk to Jason,
I already talked to him about that, and he said he would show up in a heartbeat. If he wasn't already committed to something, he said he would be there in a heartbeat. So,
well, I think you could. I would do the same. I'm sure Michael would too. So yeah,
excellent.
I would love to do that. Really.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that.
Jeff, could it be that we're planting the seeds? It could be.
That's right.
Could be. Chris Bruckner, as always, it is fantastic to speak with you, and even more so to talk about Jupiter Affect, which Jeff and I love.
Yes.
And, we gush We gush
No,
like
no,
the
no, the pleasure's
like the
mine.
fangirls that we are. But thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with us a little bit about Jupiter Affect. And we love hearing that you're playing again. And, you, Matt Devine and Michael Quercio, and heck, keep us in the loop. We want to know. And if you see any lost tracks, Jupiter Affect, you can throw them our way.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll keep you posted. And the pleasure is all mine.
Thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Bravo.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Au revoir. Au revoir, Chris.
Au revoir, madame and monsieur.
Merci, merci.
So long. All right. Bye-bye.
Good night. He's great to talk to.
But see what I'm talking about? The false modesty. He's all,
Yeah.
I don't do anything. And then he's all, but I happened to give him a drum fill that nobody could replicate.
Yes.
So here,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah.
Try that, boo.
Yeah.
Oh, tell you what, and that's gonna be the genesis of the song.
Yes.
And we're gonna give you a songwriting credit. So here
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Mr. But I'm just a drummer. Don't anybody listen to what Chris Bruckner says and he's just a drummer.
Yeah.
Much, much more than that.
I do like his approach when he talks about that he's willing to take a risk on a song, and I know exactly what he means. I can see that, and I can hear that when he plays. He's willing to just put his feeling into it over maybe technicality or precision, just to feel the song. And I think those kind of musicians or artists that are willing to take those risks have the highest reward. At least in my mind, and what I wanted to hear as a fan. So I loved hearing him talk about that approach to his playing.
Oh, I 100% agree with it, and I see it. I
Yeah.
mean, and you can hear it and feel it when you listen to these tracks.
Yeah.
100%. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I say we listen to what the guitar players from Jupiter Affect have to say.
Boom. Done.
All right. Well, let's talk to Jason.
Sounds good. So, Jason, we know that you're just coming off of a 2-month tour playing with Red Cross. We want to thank you for joining us and agreeing to take this call with regards to Jupiter Affect. And for our listeners, joining us on Paisley stage, Raspberry and Rhyme, is Jason Shapiro. Those of you who are fans of the band will know that Jason did play with the band for a bit and played on the recordings for the debut self-titled EP and the first full-length album, Instructions for the Two Ways of Becoming Alice. And Jason, first of all, welcome, but also we want to just jump in and ask you about your time being a part of the band and what it was like working with Michael Quercio, Chris Bruckner, and Dan Epstein.
It was really great. We had really good chemistry. We were laughing all the time. We just cracked each other up so much, and musically we fit like a glove. It was really fun playing with those guys.
Was it different playing with Jupiter Effect than it was playing with your previous bands, Celebrity Skin and the Roofies?
Yeah, it was a lot different. I mean, every band has their unique chemistry and feel. But one of the main things I do remember is we had a lot of fun. We're always joking so much, and that was kind of a drive for us.
I like that. Always happy, always laughing. And I mean, obviously the music tells that story of a good relationship. Jeff and I are really curious about your own experience working with Earl Mankey, who was a producer on Alice.
During that time, because I've worked with him before that with Celebrity Skin. He's a great producer. I listen back like years later, sometimes just as an experiment, like, okay, which of these recordings I've done, with whatever bands I've been playing with, and his always stand out, like the production is really good and stands the test of time.
Yeah.
He's always real easy to work with. And he always gave his input and was like, would, make me, I think it's one of the first times where a producer was like, told me to like, break out from my mold and like experiment in certain parts, like let loose right there. I remember that.
He sounds like a good producer to work with. It was he made for like an environment that was really conducive for creativity.
Oh yeah, you get into some of these studios and if it's the wrong vibe and it's a bad connection between band and studio guy, it totally shows in the recordings.
It sounds like Michael had experienced some of that with his first band, Salvation Army, where the producer wasn't interested at all. Which brings me to a memory that Michael shared. He seems to remember you showing up at a Salvation Army show in San Francisco, or that you told a story that you had once seen the band.
Yeah, when I came out to California alone really early, when I was like 17, 18, I'd done a couple of years in San Francisco. And yeah, I saw Salvation Army. I think it was at Turk Street. That might have been the club, Turk Street Station. I don't know. I don't remember. It was in a basement. And I think the other bands were like total hardcore, skinhead type weirdness going on back then in San Francisco. And then I saw Michael play. I was like, oh, who's this effeminate little popster playing in between all these like total skinhead acts? But they were good. I liked them.
So back to the lead guitar part and your work with Earl Menke. On Loved Ones Lies, you have this lead guitar part where I think you're doing pull-offs. the energy of that lead part, that solo part, is amazing. And it made me think and want to know, how do you come up with your lead parts? Do you work those up with rehearsal? Are you sitting down with demo tapes? Is it part of the jam session, or you just play as you feel?
It can be any version of that. They can be thought out ahead of time or on the spot. There might have been a lot of on the spot stuff happening then. And I don't remember how that one happened. I just remember it being kind of real. To me, it reminds me of the beginning of kind of Pete Townsend 60s kind of, I don't even know what I was doing, but I knew what I was going for. Then it morphed into more of a lead after the wiry picking stuff in the beginning. I think that was made up on the spot.
I love that solo. It's a great solo.
Yeah, it's a good one. I think I kind of knew what I wanted to go for, definitely in the beginning. I just went for that part and then kind of ironed out towards the end.
Jason, one of the things I wanted to ask about, and this stems from part of our conversation with Chris Bruckner. Chris talked to us, similar to what you've said, that, that it was a good time and a lot of good chemistry, and there was a lot of laughter that went on in those sessions. And Chris even went as far as saying, sometimes even to the point of just laughing and goofing off with very little rehearsing going on. and we were just curious if there was a story you wanted to share or that you'd be willing to share about anything you remember from those rehearsals, because we found that really interesting, because all of you together are really accomplished musicians, and so we're just trying to imagine that rehearsal time, just not rehearsing, but being something else.
God, it was so long ago. It was just one of those things. It was total chemistry, and some people like bring it out of you, and you bounce off each other. We were definitely driven by the ridiculousness of everything. We already knew we could play, and there were some great songs aboard. But if there were good jokes and ridiculousness to be had, I think that took priority.
I'll take it.
There was drinking involved back in the day, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll help loosen
But
up
I
the
think it would
mood.
have been there without the drink.
Got it.
So when we were talking to Michael, Soraya was being a little bit nosy, and she was asking if there were any songs that you guys had recorded that had never made it to a record. And Michael mentioned a song called There Was a Time. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. Okay. I remember playing it. Maybe we recorded it. If he says we did, we did.
It sounds like it never made it to... Well, I know it never made it to a record, but it sounds like he believes that it's on a tape somewhere. And I was just wondering if you had any recollection of that song. But it sounds like you remember at least working that one up.
I do. I do have recollection. I don't think I have a copy of it. It was like, there was a time, na 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 na. Na, 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 na. That's all I remember.
Nice.
Maybe that one got cut.
What Michael told us was there was a tape of it. It had been recorded, but it's never seen the light of day. And so Jeff and I would like to find this and get a hold of it.
Yes,
but
we would.
You gotta start it.
No.
You give us a melody.
Yes, it sounds like he doesn't even
I
have
could be
it.
wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was it.
That sounds like a Michael melody.
Maybe, if it's gone, maybe we can re-record it.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, again.
Nice.
Man, Jason, I like the way you think. I like the way.
Well, everybody, all the band members so far said that they would love to play with you again. So that's obviously you didn't leave with you didn't leave and burn any bridges on your way out. So
no.
I wanted to ask, out of the band's catalog with that first EP and the Alice album, do you have a song or two that you're most proud of? It's been quite a while.
Right. I like a lot of the album, the full length.
Okay.
I really like Drusilla. Loved Ones Live a lot. I think those would be my top two of the album. The EP, yeah, I like Big Monster Chains and Velocity, Throwing in the Towel. I think I really like the album kind of as a whole the most. But those two were the stand-ups for me, Loved Ones Live and Drusilla.
Jason, something that came from our discussion with Michael, and we just wanted to ask a quick question about that.
Yeah.
When we asked him to kind of to talk to us about, essentially how the band kind of started just doing, the members started doing different things, and what he said was the dissolution of the band was, or just people leaving the band, it was very organic, and people wanting to do new projects or work on different things. And we wanted to ask you about that moment where you decided to move on to other products and leave Jupiter Affect.
I think at that time I was really wanting to front my own thing and put my time towards that, because I'd kind of been floating for a while post Celebrity Skin, and then this came about, and it was great, it was fun. I may have been sobering up at that point, but I don't know if that had anything to do with it. It was mostly just wanting to do my own thing, and I think I was like, we're spending a lot of time. I was driving way down to, I forget where we used to practice, somewhere down. It was a little far. I just wanted to put my time towards doing my own thing at the moment.
Got it.
I'm not sure if Dan left before me. You guys probably know more than me.
I think that's
my memory is pretty blurred.
Yeah, I think that's what Michael had mentioned, that Dan had left even before the recording of the Alice record, but he was still willing to come in.
Okay.
That's the way that Michael had remembered it. So, speaking of Dan, how was it for you as a guitar player and having a second guitar player? How was it for you working with him as a second guitar player? How did you guys mesh together?
It was great because I felt we were like totally different styles, and there was, we didn't have to we weren't stepping on each other at all because, we had totally different styles and sounds. So it worked out nice, and he's a cool dude, so no problem there.
It really sounds like it comes across that way in the recordings to me, where the guitars just sound like they complement each other and nobody's playing over the top of each other, or competing, I should say. So I really liked how they sound, at least on the recordings, they sound great. Well, Jason, we had one more question, and that question comes from Chris Bruckner. We asked him if he had any questions for you that we should ask, and he said he wanted to ask you if you would be willing to share any of your antics or stories explaining why you missed a rehearsal or two. He said that rarely happened, but you had some fabulous stories that were off the wall about why you missed a rehearsal or two.
Well, I'm guessing he's thinking about this one story, which is actually pretty horrible.
Oh no.
It's okay. I survived, but I was kind of a partied out mess at that time, and I went to these dudes' houses and was doing whatever, drugs and drinking, and at one point one of the guys pulled out a knife, and they came at me, and I just scrambled and literally jumped out the window of a second floor apartment.
Wow.
And escaped.
Oh my gosh.
I think that's what he's hinting at, but yeah,
I think I seem to
Those were the
remember.
days.
I think I seem to remember something about jumping out a two-story window. So that must be. That's a good reason to miss a rehearsal. And I'm glad that you're okay and everything ended
Yeah,
up okay.
Yes.
I know. God, bad decisions back in the day.
Oh wow.
We've all got them.
Yes, yes. You're now playing with Red Cross, and you guys have some amazing music. The new album is fantastic. I was fortunate enough to see you guys play when you did the Casbah show when you started this 2 month tour. It was absolutely fantastic, and
Right.
you're always great to see live. And I will say that in addition to your guitar playing, you've got pretty good skills as a guitar pick flicker, because you were at one end of the stage.
Oh, yeah.
I was at the other end of the stage, and you called my name, and I held out my hand, and you flicked the pick from across the stage. It hit right in the center of the palm of my hand. I don't know how you did that from across the stage.
Oh, wow.
That's like a Paul. That's a Paul Stanley move right there, or a Gene Simmons move. But it hit right in the middle of the
damn.
palm. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't quick enough to grasp the pick, and it fell on the stage. But it was like right in front of me, so I was able to pick the pick up right from the stage. But
But someone else grabbed it?
no, I grabbed it. It bounced off the palm of my hand and right on the
Okay.
stage, and it's sitting right here in front of me, right on my desk. So, thank you for that, and you've got skills, buddy. But we
It was meant for you.
all that practice paid off. So we did want before we let you go, we did want to ask you if is there anything that you wanted to promote or anything that you wanted to talk about as far as what you're doing?
No, I mean, the Red Cross documentary's coming out.
Yes, I'm very
So-
excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be cool, and we're doing a month Europe tour, possibly something else right after that. Who knows? I mean, that machine's already, I don't really need to
Yeah, and
promote it.
all four of you guys on stage are absolutely fantastic to watch. So in addition to the great music, just the musicianship and the live performance,
Yeah.
it's second to none when you see Red Cross. So.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, Jason. Well, we really appreciate you taking time to talk about this period in your life quite a while ago with Jupiter Effect, and we really appreciate your perspective
Okay.
on the band.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Jason.
so much.
Bye
All
bye.
right, guys.
Okay, we'll talk
See
to you later. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.
Man, that guy is so fantastic to watch, Soraya.
Dude, that is Jason. First of all, Jason Shapiro is just an amazing musician, just outright.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that there's going to be a Red Cross documentary, plus a European tour for those guys. And I'm just glad because this last album is very, very good.
It is.
Yeah.
It's up in my top 3 of this year of
Of this year.
2019. Yeah, that album.
Hands down.
I really enjoy that. So that's really good.
What I like about Jason, and granted, we're talking to him about Jupiter Affect and not his current projects, but it's been repeated. The fun, but also it just seems like this project really kind of got the best of all these musicians.
Yeah.
And Instructions for the Two Ways of Becoming Alice. Jason talked about it. I mean, and Michael, the way he talks about Alice, this was really a special project. And, Genghis Khan is just something so experimental and different. This is really, I think, for people who've never listened to Jupiter Affect, I really hope it encourages them to, find these tracks and listen to them, because this was really a special band that brought together some really stellar musicians.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, from a starting point, if you're just talking about like the bass music, you've got these Michael Quercio tunes as a starting point, and then you bring in these amazing musicians that can just deliver, and then going from the later period 3 o'clock stuff, which we've talked about, and where that went, and then into the Permanent Green Light stuff with Matt Devine, which was absolutely fabulous stuff, And then moving into Jupiter Affect, where you've got these guitar players, like heavy hitters, right, coming in and just delivering these riffs and these licks, power licks, and just amazing stuff. So, great band. So now we got to talk to Dan. Right? Yeah. So I liked how Jason was talking about how it was working with Dan and how the two of them had different styles. So it made for that good partnership. So let's talk to Dan.
I say let's do it.
Hey, Jeffrey.
Hey, Dan, it's me.
Hey, Dan. Good morning.
Hey, Soraya.
Yay, this happened. I'm really excited. We're gonna just jump right into this, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first of all, we want to welcome you to Paisley Stage Raspberry and Rhyme.
Thank you.
And we want to also thank you for joining us to talk about your time at Jupiter Affect. And just overall, we're just curious. We wanted to know if you could just talk to us about what it was like being in the band and working with Michael, Chris, and Jason.
Absolutely. Well, I would, and I've said this many times, I'll say it again, it was hands down the best band experience I've ever had. I was only in the band for, I guess, 2.5 years, but it was so much fun. I'd never been before or since in a band where everybody brought such talent and such, I guess, so much joy to the proceedings. I mean, everyone in the band was, I mean, I felt like I was musically the weakest link of the four. I thought, Jason, brilliant guitar player, just, music just flows out of his fingers. Chris, fantastic drummer, totally in the pocket, great as a rhythm guitar player, it was great for me to, sync up with him. And we definitely had a kind of a Pete Townsend, Keith Moon sort of thing together. And we just like instantly clicked with that. And then, of course, Michael's just a brilliant songwriter, fantastic bass player. And, and just like we never had a practice where anyone was short of ideas. There was always something cooking. Michael would always come in with, if not ideas for a new song, ideas to make a song that we'd already been working on better. But at the same time, he was very open to the ideas that I brought in, that Jason and Chris brought in. And it was just fantastic. And then, of course, making instructions for the 2 ways of becoming an analyst with, I think that was the name of it. It's been so long. With Earl Mankey was just like, I left the band shortly. Actually, I was, not to get too far ahead of ourselves in this conversation, but I left the band before we made the record, but Michael talked me into staying, and I'm so glad he did, because I just knew that after that experience that I would never have a better recording experience than making an album with Earl Mankey.
Wow,
that speaks volume.
Yeah, it was. My memories of the band are incredibly fond. We had so much fun. Played so many great gigs. Almost died together on our flight to South by Southwest when lightning struck the plane. But if it had gone down that way, well, I guess there are worse ways to go out than.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
So when lightning strikes, so I want to hear a little bit about that. Did you see or hear or feel the lightning hitting the airplane?
We felt it, and all the electricity went out for a second. So like the cabin went just completely black, and we were shaking, and of course they told everybody to return to their seats and stay there for the duration of the flight. And we were completely stressed out. And Jason managed to convince girl who was sitting next to him to run back and raid the flight attendant liquor cart.
Wow.
And she came back with a bunch of bottles for all of us to calm our nerves.
Wow.
And that was great too. I mean, that there would always be adventures like that, and I mean, we laughed. We laughed so much. I mean, we were just constantly cracking each other up, finding ourselves in amusing situations, finding ourselves in not amusing situations that we laughed at anyway. It was pretty wonderful.
Wow. Yeah, that seems to be a common thread that we're hearing, talking to all of the members, that everybody seemed to have like a great time. It sounds like a fun place to be at rehearsals and just hanging out. But how did you come to join the band in the first place?
Well, I was scouted. I was playing lead guitar in a Nick Gilder tribute band with Robbie Rist called Saint Nick, and Jim Lespizo was the drummer, who's now with Brian Wilson, and we kind of formed it as. It was like a project to tell the world that there was more to Nick Gilder than just Hot Child in the City. So,
Yeah.
It was not meant to be a long-lasting thing. It was just kind of to prove a point.
Yeah.
And Brian Bullen, who I'd worked with at the LA Reader, came to see our show, or one of our shows, and he brought Michael with him. And, I kind of knew, I certainly knew who Michael was. And in fact, I first saw the only time I saw the 3 o'clock was opening for REM in Chicago in the summer of '85. And I thought they were terrible, which I've since told Michael, honestly, you guys sounded like Bad Rush that night. You thought it was pretty funny. But but I knew that he was a talented guy. He was playing in Permanent Green Light at the time, and I recently picked up one of their singles, which I really liked, and so Michael came to the show with Brian, and then Brian later on talked to me and said, "Hey, Michael's looking for another guitarist to add to Permanent Green Light." I thought, oh, well, that's interesting, because the one thing that I didn't like about Permanent Green Light was that, this was the lineup with Bernard Yin, that no one was singing harmonies. And I thought that Michael had such great melodies and deserved someone who could sing harmonies really well. And I was a good harmony singer. So I thought, well, that could work out. So I wound up going down to Michael's rehearsal space, which was in Long Beach, or Long Beach adjacent at the time. And it was really casual. It was just, I thought it was going to be with a whole band, but it was just me and him. And we were working out some, he was showing me some songs that he'd written and kind of playing them together. And we just really clicked. And we had a lot in common in terms of, the music we loved. We were both really into late 60s British psychedelia, stuff like, The Move, The Pretty Things, the Who's more psychedelic stuff, like on Sell Out. And so we really kind of clicked on that level, and I loved his songs, and I thought, well, yeah, this would be great. What I didn't realize was that he'd essentially broken up Permanent Green Light and was looking to form an almost entirely new band. It's going to be him and Chris and me, and then Jason Shapiro on lead guitar, which I was incredibly excited about because I didn't know Jason at all, but the band I'd had in Chicago in the late 80s and early 90s, which was a band called Lava Sutra, we had opened for Celebrity Skin when they played Chicago. And I remember just thinking, like, oh my God, these two guitarists just like completely have their shit together. And it was so much fun watching them. And I loved their stage presence and which was so different from what most rock bands of the era were doing. So I was really excited. I didn't know Jason at all, but I remember our first rehearsal just really clicking, and that I guess the roles were pretty much. I don't even remember if we talked about them, but it was obvious that like Jason was a shit hot guitarist, so I was gonna like do rhythm and do harmony leads when necessary, but obviously he was gonna have full reign to wail. And Chris and I totally clicked. Michael and I sang harmony really well together, and then Jason sang really great harmony too. So all of a sudden we went from Permanent Green Light, which had Michael and great songs and a good sound, to this band that was like, I used to describe it as like the Hollies meets early 70s Queen. You know, we would be really heavy, but at the same time we would have these, 3-part high harmonies, and it kind of freaked people out. I remember like our first gig, which I believe was at Jack's Sugar Shack, opening for Baby Lemonade, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but I remember the look on people's faces in the crowd when we went into this whole jam at the end of I think it was Queen of Market Street, which like turned into Tales of Brave Ulysses and How Many More Times and by Led Zeppelin. And it was all this stuff that like, I mean, this is the late 90s, and power pop had kind of been codified into this very strict conservative kind of sound and format. And here we were with like these really melodic, catchy tunes, but we were also really heavy, and we would do these psychedelic jams, and it was not exactly what people were expecting. Some people were really into it. Some people were, I don't think, I think it was a little too much for them to handle.
Dan, one of the things that Jeff and I, in talking with the other members, you really synthesize this. This is the chemistry between this core group was really strong from the get-go. Musically, there are a lot of shared influences, but it seems like you all played into each other's strengths. And the collaborative element is something that has really intrigued Jeff and I. And I want to ask about some songs that you have co-writing credits on.
Oh, sure.
I See the Sun and Good Time. And we're really curious because you've definitely, painted this great picture of how collaborative and the chemistry. But we want to know how these songs come about. And I like the idea. I like hearing that the band and Michael was open to ideas and collaboration. So how did these songs come up?
Well, Michael and I used to, once the band really got rolling, Michael and I would have these kind of writing sessions, I guess I would call them, where he would come over to my house. I lived in the Fairfax district, and about once a week he'd show up, and I had a bass and a small amp that he could use, and we would just kind of kick ideas around. And I in previous bands I'd been in, I was the main songwriter, so it was incredibly like all the pressure was off in the Jupiter Effect, because Michael was the songwriter, but I would still occasionally come up with ideas, and then Michael and would come over and we'd flesh them out together. I See the Sun was that was one that I definitely came up with the main riff, and I think the bulk of the chord progression and the title. And I would just said like, Michael, I have this.
Never put it together. No, I don't
what can we do with it? And, there was a very kind of like love around the For Sale album feel to it. And a title like I See the Sun seemed very much in Michael's wheelhouse in terms of, psychedelic imagery and stuff. And so then, we kind of cycled that, that chord progression and riff a bit. And then he went home and wrote this great song on top of it. And then we introduced it to the band, and and again, it was like everybody was open to stuff. There was no that song was a little different from other things we'd been doing, but there was no resistance. There was no oh, well, that doesn't really fit with our stuff. Like everybody, I can't remember any song, whether it was ones that we've played and recorded or ones that we messed about with for a bit and then discarded. I don't remember anybody being initially resistant to anything, or negative. And certainly, I think we'd all been in bands where there was, a lot of competition over songwriting. There was a lot of push and pull over direction, and I never felt like that was the case in the Jupiter Effect. Good Times, I'm trying to remember what I actually had to do with that song. I think, I don't know, I think maybe, I don't know why I would be credited on that. Maybe because I added a little fog hat to the to the arrangement. I was always into 70s stoner rock and stuff. So any chance I got to throw in a little bit of that stuff, I always enjoyed. I think another song that really sticks out to me though as a collaborative effort was, and now I can't remember what it's called. Ice Cream Lolly, which is on Instructions, and that was another one that. Where I'd had some music kicking around for years, and I think originally that was going to be a song about the death of Brian Jones or something so, like in my head that's but I could never put the lyrics together, and Michael wrote this great song on top of the music, and then when we went to record it, I had an idea for the solo. I had been experimenting with this tuning on my guitar that was basically 5 of the strings were tuned to G. Oh, wow. And one string was tuned to either B or D, I can't remember, but it was sort of like a droning sitar-like thing. Inspired by the Roy Wood solo on the Moves recording of Last Thing on My Mind, and I wanted something like that in there, so I messed about with this. And I thought it came out great, but the other really gratifying thing was that it kind of blew Earl Mankey's mind. Like I remember Earl, like picking my guitar up and messing around with it in the tuning that it was, and it was just like, this is so cool, and it's like, wow, I just blew Earl Mankey's mind.
Wow.
I happy.
Wow, that's very cool. I love that story. So speaking about guitar and collaboration, I want to thank you for the article that you wrote about Jupiter Effect, today's cool album of the day, the 779 in the series.
Great. Yeah,
that's one of the there's very little information online about Jupiter Effect, so that's a good article. I appreciate you writing that. And in that you talk about, and you mentioned this earlier, about the collaboration between you and Jason and working up harmony leads. Can you talk a little bit more about that, like how you guys would come up with that and what you would play, what he would play? And
yeah, I mean, I don't really know enough. I'm not a trained musician, so I don't know things like fifths or fourths, or I mean, I know what, I know the concept behind them, but I don't, like, if you said to me, play this note, but the fourth, I wouldn't know what to do. So Jason was, and I don't know if Jason knows this stuff either, but he's got a head for it. And so when we would try to work up harmony leads, he would just be like, play this. And then I would play it, and then he would play his thing, and we'd go, oh, okay. And, then I might noodle around with it a little more, or, we might experiment with it. But Jason really took the lead, no pun intended, on that stuff. And I was more than happy to just, go along with it, because the results were incredible. I mean, we would get these Queen/Thin Lizzy type things going. And, like I said, I didn't really understand the theory behind it, but I definitely understood how cool it sounded.
Yeah, I agree. Thin Lizzy is what came to mind for me as well.
Awesome, thank you.
See, I like listening to people who play instruments talk about, what the influences they hear. I'm not the musician Jeff is, so I enjoy hearing these things. It teaches me a lot. Dan, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question. I'm just curious.
Sure.
So, you mentioned that you were ready to leave, and then there's a conversation that with Michael to keep you on to do instructions.
Right.
I'm just curious, was that a long conversation, or was that a short conversation to convince you to stick around?
It was a long conversation. It was, I mean, there were a lot of things that were going on at the time. I felt like, I was having some personal stuff I was dealing with that was both distracting from the band, and the band was causing problems in that. I was also fairly early into my career as a freelance writer, and so it was kind of like I felt I needed to concentrate on writing, and that as much as I loved playing music, as much as I loved being in the band, we were making zero money, and it was kind of like I really need to concentrate on what will pay the rent. Also, I mean, Jeff, you mentioned that, there isn't much out there online about the Jupiter Effect, and that's because, we basically existed in the internet was a thing, but it wasn't like it is today, where there's, all kinds of information available on bands. The whole notion of promoting bands, I mean, I don't believe there was even any MySpace at that point. I mean, so we didn't have a website. We didn't have, we weren't taking advantage of it at all as a way to promote ourselves. And, I feel like this was a band that if we'd come along, I mean, I don't know that we would have ever fit into what was going on musically in the rest of the world, but I feel like if we'd come along in the age of Facebook, or at least the early days of Facebook or whatever, like, we could have had a much greater reach. A lot more people would have known that we existed, but we were playing the LA scene for what that was worth. We're doing occasional gigs out of town, but we couldn't really afford to tour at length. And there was and we were on a small label, Egbert, and there was I was also feeling a weird pressure from, and this is not to speak ill of Greg Donnell, who was a major champion of the band and a lovely guy, but he was kind of under the misimpression, shall we say, that because I was a journalist who worked in the music world, that I would be able to use my connections to get the band more buzz. And that's really kind of the opposite of how it worked, because, you know, you, especially back then, there was a lot of kind of internal policing in the music journalism world about, like, you know, you couldn't promote your own thing. You had to be careful about writing about friends' bands, you know, so you would not seem like you were just, you know, kissing your friends' asses. And you know, I remember I had a birthday party probably a year or two after that, where after I left the band, where I had some local bands play, and, you know, one of my editors got in my face about it because, like, you know, this sets a bad precedent, and, you know, your credibility is shot now. You know, I mean, all this kind of stuff. And so it was really uncomfortable for me to kind of be, you know, in this situation with the band. And then on top of it, you know, bands that we would play with, you know, knew that I was writing for the LA Weekly. So it'd be like, hey, here's our demo. I was like, well, yeah, that's cool, but, like, I'm here to play a gig with the Jupiter Effect. I'm not here to ask you about your band or you know, be on the receiving end of your demo cassettes. So it was just, you know, I felt like all of this, plus the fact that it didn't really feel like we were making much headway. It just seemed like it was time for me to do something else. And, you know, it was not a decision I came to lightly, you know, because I loved the band, I loved the guys, and our time together was so happy, but it was just like, this, for a number of reasons, is not going to work for me. And Michael, you know, Michael was great about it. He really, you know, he didn't get pissed at me. He didn't do a guilt trip on me. He really, you know, understood where I was coming from, but he also, at the same time, said, like, well, look, it looks like we're going to be able to do a record with Earl, and you were part of so many of these songs, and, you know, when we play them so well together, and it's not going to take that much of your time to make this record. And, you know, which is true. We did probably, I'm going to say, 3 days of backing tracks, you know, like the basic bass, drums, guitar. And then everything else that I did, I think was like 2 or 3 afternoons where I'd go down to Earl's studio and meet with Michael and Earl, and then, you know, put my guitar overdubs or harmonies or something like that. But it was really like low hassle, low pressure. And Michael was just like, you know, if you don't do this, you're going to regret it. And, or maybe it wasn't those exact words, but that's what I took away from it, was like, yes, and that this would be the perfect way to leave, where it's to do justice to these songs that I really loved and felt very proprietary towards. Like, you know, if it had just, like, they could have easily done it with just Jason, Michael, and Chris. You know, they could have recorded all these songs. They could have done the harmonies. They could have done Jason could have handled all the guitar parts. It wouldn't have been a big deal. But, you know, there really was a chemistry and a brotherhood even there, that, you know, that I think Michael was very, very respectful of, and you know, wanted my vibe and essence on there, as well as everybody else. And it was probably, I think, maybe even 2 months after I played my last gig with the band that we went into the studio to do this. I could be completely wrong, but that feels about right to me. And and again, I'm so glad that he was patient with me about it and supportive of what I was dealing with, but also saying like, you can still make time to do this, and and the record will be better, and you will, you'll at least go out having done this, and I think it's a wonderful record. I think it holds up really well. It's like I've played on a handful of records over the years, but there's only one album that I've participated in that's on my iPod shuffle, and that's this record, and I still love hearing those songs every time they come up.
I want to piggyback on that. You've mentioned Ice Cream Lolly, but
Right.
are there any other songs from that album that you're particularly proud of?
Loved Ones Lies. This was just Michael Quercio in a nutshell. Like we have all these songs together that most of which we've played numerous times live. We knew in and out. And Michael came to rehearsal about maybe 2 weeks maybe not even 2 weeks. Maybe it was the rehearsal before we went into the studio, and said, "I have a new song," and it was "Loved Ones Lies," and we just kind of worked it up in the in rehearsal, and actually I think it was the second rehearsal before we went in, because the last rehearsal before we went in, Earl came to the space and kind of checked it out. I remember him really liking this song, but I was doing something that he thought was way too busy on it. So he was like, just like do like kind of a ringing thing. And, he was right. It worked much better. And we worked that up in the studio. And I also remember that was the one, I think it was the only song on the record where I played my Rickenbacker, and I played it through Earl's Vox AC30, and so I got to kind of indulge in my Paul Weller jam fantasies while tracking the rhythm parts to that.
Nice.
So that's a very favorite memory of from the recording.
Cupid came and shot his arrow through the dark and lonely sky, through your head, and now you're dead to loved ones' lies.
Let's see. Drusilla, I Dig Your Scene. That was another. I think that was fairly late in the game. We definitely played that live a few times, and I guess that's the one. If I had to single out one part of the record that I don't really like, I still disagree with Michael's decision to overdub crowd noise over Jason's solo. I think it's kind of cheesy, and I know what he was going for, but I love that track otherwise, and that's like the one thing that kind of takes it down for me.
One last question about the songs. So Michael has mentioned that there is one song that was never released and was called "There Was a Time." And our question to you is, do you remember that song?
Oh, sure. I can sing it to you right now.
All right.
There was a time when I... Yeah, it was a great song. It was... I'm trying to remember if it was released on something. Like, I feel like it may have come out on a compilation. Maybe something Brian Bolin put out. It was... And we didn't record that during these sessions. We recorded that at the sessions for the first Jupiter Effect EP, the one with Angela Davis hair, and And we recorded that at, I forget the name of the guy, Jimmy something or other. It was at it was like a home studio setup in LA. And we weren't really happy with a lot of how that session went. And I think part of that was just sort of we were still sort of finding ourselves as a band. But I think there was a lot of, this guy, Jimmy, who was producing it, was trying to impose a little too much of his own will onto it. The song was, I would say, was probably the most buzz-cocky of anything that we did. It was very kind of straight ahead, charging, pretty 3, maybe 4 chords. And I remember that I'm pretty sure it did end up on something, because I remember listening to it and going, that fucker left my rhythm guitar part off it. Oh. Like I could hear it, and it's like wait a minute. So, it was a great song though. It should have come out on something, and I feel like I can't remember why we left it off the EP. Maybe we ran out of money to mix it, or maybe Michael just wasn't happy with it.
I gotta hunt that down. I don't think I've heard that anywhere, so I need to hunt that one down. I'm glad that you mentioned Drusilla, because it reminded me of a story that Michael was telling us when he brought the song to the band, and it was called Priscilla, We Dig Your Scene. And I think it was your idea to change from Priscilla to Drusilla, is what he told us.
I don't remember it that way, and but it's entirely possible, because I'm a Roman history geek, and Drusilla was, I believe, was he called Caligula's sister? Something like that, and I think if I did come up with it, because Michael knows his history too, so it's entirely possible that he came up with it and he's just being nice. But yeah, things would happen like that. I'm looking at some of these other titles. I feel like there were other lyrics or titles that would occasionally change just from us kind of shooting the shit in the studio, making joke, or in the rehearsal space, joking around, and stuff would then just kind of get internalized. I think we Angela Davis Hair was kind of an example of that, where during the power part, Jason and I would do the Black Power fist on stage during that, and really play that up. And we just I guess nothing was, we all had a lot of respect for each other's ideas and talents, but also nothing was off limits in terms of fucking with it, or joking about it, or messing around with it. So I think, for instance, Back to Good Time, I think that more Foghatty part, that definitely was not in there when it showed up. And I'm trying to remember if that was originally a Permanent Green Light song. I know a couple of these were, I think Together had started out as a Permanent Green Light song, and maybe Bring Back the Wonderful Girl as well. Most of these, though, were written while I was in the band.
So I have one last question about Jupiter Effect. When you think back on the band and people hear about the band, what do you want the legacy to be for the band? What do you want people to think about when they think about Jupiter Effect?
I guess kind of like what we were talking about earlier. We were a band with great songs, great harmonies, great riffs, but we were also really powerful. We were not beholden to any kind of received ideas of what power pop should be. We were putting the power in pop in the power pop, and the pop didn't have to suffer, and it didn't. It was still incredibly melodic, but it was also, we were loud, we were heavy, we had guitar solos, we did ridiculous shit like I believe there may have been some human pyramids, one gig or another.
Wow.
There were, we all were into clothes and into being outrageous on stage. One of my favorite memories is we were playing a gig at the 14 Below in Santa Monica, and we realized after sound check that no one had brought eyeliner.
Oh.
So we had to take we all piled into my old Oldsmobile and drove to the nearest Walgreens or CVS or whatever it was, so we could buy some cheap eyeliner and put it on before the show. And I think that was just me, Jason, and Michael. I don't think Chris was an eyeliner guy, but and there was so much. There was so much love of music in that band. I mean, clearly we were not doing it for money. We were just all really inspired by Michael's songs and by what, the magic we made together. And, and there were, like you said, there were a lot of places where we came together musically in terms of influences, but then, like for instance, I was talking about late 60s psychedelia. Like Jason wasn't really hip to any of that. I remember, making long drives with him. Either he would pick me up or I would pick him up because we lived relatively near each other in LA and go to rehearsal together. And I would be playing like some Kaleidoscope or Pretty Things or something like that for him. And, this was all just completely new to him. He had no idea what this was. And, and it didn't matter. It's just like we were still found a way to all be on the same level when we got to the stage or the rehearsal studio. And, I wish there had been a way to prolong it. I wish that the world had been more aware of what we were doing. I wish there had been, ways to. I mean, the few reviews that Instructions got were very positive. I think Big Takeover did a great review of us. I think we got a great review in the Washington Post. Like, I mean, there were, but also like, did any copies of the record even make it to Washington? I don't know, to the DC area. So it's, I feel like there was a lot stacked against us in terms of the way the music business was at the time, the media, and I think but I'm so proud of, it's coming on 20 years since we released the record. Yeah. And I'm just, it's like, I guess I feel about it, and I'm sorry for the long-winded answer, but I guess like if I had been in a really cool band in the 60s that nobody had heard of, but we made one great record, and then 20 years later, people started talking about it. Like that's how I feel about Instructions. I just feel like we made this great record, and I hope people will discover it. And it's incredibly gratifying that, people like you dig it. And, and every once in a while, somebody would be like, hey man, I found that Jupiter Effect record and it's really good, and it's so gratifying. And it's just like, yeah, it came out like we wanted it to come out. It's a great representation of who we were as a band, and as a creative entity. And, and sometimes that just has to be enough.
Nice. I love that.
I don't think there's anything more to say about that. However, we do have one last point for our listeners. And Dan, before we let you go, thank you once again for talking to us today about the band. We do want to talk briefly about your work since
the days of Jupiter Affect, and as you've mentioned, you're quite an accomplished writer, and between your series High and Tight with Rolling Stone magazine, your books Stars and Strikes, Honky Tonk Tourist, Big Hair and Plastic Grass, among so many more. Can you share with our listeners, one, where they can find you online now in the day of social media and so many other resources, and maybe a little more about where they can find your writings?
Sure. My website is www.bighairplasticgrass.com. That's my blog, and there are also links to various books I've written that you can purchase from there if you so desire. I'm on Twitter at Big Hair Plasgrass. It's Plasgras. And yeah, I mean, I write for a number of different outlets, writing about everything from music to baseball to pop culture to marijuana. And I'm working on a couple of other book projects, which will hopefully see the light of day, or at least I'll be able to announce them this year. And I do feel like I made the right decision in leaving. I mean, I have been able to make a living as a writer the last 20 years somehow. The other cool thing I'm working on is a project called Stomp Box, which is a book on it's basically a photo coffee table book on effects pedals.
Yes.
And it's in collaboration with a fine art photographer named Elon Paz, who did a great book a couple years ago called Dust and Grooves, which is about record collecting. And this is the same sort of treatment, except we're talking to 100 great guitar players about the pedal that really, means a lot to them musically, or there's stories behind it. And so that's going to come out this summer, and that's been a really fun project to work on, and very excited to have that see the light of day.
Yeah, I can't wait for that personally. That sounds awesome. That sounds really good.
Let me find the link for that. It's www.stompboxbook.com.
Okay.
That's the website for that, and I have some writing up on Fat blog, or up on the blog and up on the site. It's so much fun, and we're talking to so many cool and interesting guitarists, and like everything from legends like Billy Gibbons down to lesser known but up and coming players that we think are worthwhile. And
nice.
So if you dig pedals, you'll dig Stomp Box.
Nice. I can't wait. I'll be looking forward to that. Very cool. Very cool. All right, Dan. Well, we better let you go. We went way over what we said we would go, but
that's really cool. I loved this conversation. I love reliving those days, and I'm so pleased that that y'all are flying the flag for Jupiter Effect.
Always.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah. Great album, great band, and you are a big part of it, and we really appreciate your input and your stories behind this great band. Thank you so much.
Right on, guys. Thank you.
All right, Dan.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It was really, really great talking to him and listening to Dan's stories. I wish we had a lot more time. Our podcast is always already going way over.
Yeah.
But man, he was great to talk to. But I think we should talk to Brad next.
I think that's a great idea. Brad, thank you so much for taking our call today and sitting down to talk with us about your participation in the band Jupiter Affect. From our research, you joined the band early on and then played live with the band a number of times, as well as on the album The Restoration of Culture After Genghis Khan. And we just would like to start out by asking you how it was for you being a part of this band at that time and working with Michael Quercio and Chris Bruckner.
I can't say strongly enough how much I appreciated my time with both of them. I still keep up with them, maybe not as much as I should, but they're both people that I consider friends that mean a lot to me. And it was a fantastic experience. I joined the band when I was 20, so I was a good bit younger than them at the time. And I learned so much about the scene they came from, which the music scene from my hometown is so important to me. And I'm embarrassed to say, on this podcast that before joining the group, I wasn't familiar with the Paisley Underground bands and the scene that, kind of bubbled over from there. But I got into it as much as I could, with everything I could find. And it's been really cool. I still listen to some of those groups. Of course, I still listen to Michael's work and everything. And it was a great pleasure and honor to be working with them. And very influential.
How did you come to join the band?
It was funny. So I was a kid working at the public library and just gigging in my band, and this kid that was even younger than me at the library had done the graphic design for Instructions on the 2 Ways of Becoming Alice. He gave me the record, and I listened to it and I liked it. And the singer for the group that was my own band came over to my house, and he's like, "You got the Jupiter Effect record? These guys are awesome. The singer sings really high, and they have high harmonies over." Was a direct quote from him. And I hadn't listened to it yet. I was like, "Oh yeah, well, let's put it on." So we got into it, listening to the Alice, and through that kid that had done their graphic design, I got Michael's contact, and I was just trying to see if we could get on a show with them because we thought they were cool and they were farther along than us. And inexplicably, Michael, who I think he would tell you he's not really one for going out to rock shows, he went and saw my band play at a place in Long Beach, and I remember feeling like I overdid it on that show. I was kind of embarrassed. I was like, "Oh, Michael came to our show, and I'm acting like a clown, bouncing around. I think I played with my teeth or something like that." Little did I know, Michael just eats that type of thing up. So
yeah.
He was really complimentary and made me feel pretty cool. And we just kind of stayed in touch. He ended up asking about just jamming with them, which they were starting work on the material for Genghis Khan, which, it's just really interesting because you get to the eccentricities of Michael and Chris kind of unravel as you get to know them. And they were showing me a new song, and it's like, one of them had a really weird title, and then the next one he introduced it "We've been working on this one called The Leader of All Tribes Living in Felt Tents." And I asked him, "Have you guys been watching a lot of A&E or something?" I think he might have been thinking, "Oh great, this isn't happening again." But I was totally into it. I hung out with them after, and the other thing is I was kind of a loser. I had wrecked my car a few months before I met Michael, and he actually drove all the way into Long Beach and just picked me up. So I just was a total little kid, he picked me up. I'm at my parents' house and drove me to practice, and that was the routine for a while.
Wow.
But then they had a show that was a kind of significant show, and Chris called, and I didn't realize Michael was on the line. But it was kind of weird because I was talking to Chris, and then Michael said something. I was like, "Oh, Michael's here too."
Oh.
But then they asked if I would like to join full time, and I was super excited to actually become a member. I was hoping that maybe I would just get to jam with them a little bit and maybe get a guest solo on the record or something like that. But they invited me to join, and like I said, it was just great getting to know them more, hearing all the stories. And we would go out after, and these guys would argue about metaphysics and medieval Gnosticism, and I remember they were arguing about something that was over my head, and one of them said, "Oh, well, you must love the Alleghenies." And then I don't know if it was Michael or which one, but he just kind of like looked down at his plate and shook his head, smiled, and said, "I do. I love the Alleghenies."
Oh my gosh.
And that's what it was like all the time with them. So I mean, I didn't just learn a lot about like the hippest '80s music scene in LA. I learned a lot about French heresies and all. And I should say to my credit, like it didn't take long before they started to think that I was really weird too. So that made me feel kind of good. Once I was driving with Michael, I think we were just carpooling. I don't think that I was still a rideless layabout at that time. But Michael told me, I met you and I really liked your guitar playing, and I was happy that you joined the band, but then after a while we got to know you better, and I was like, oh, thank God, he's completely insane. And I remember feeling like that was kind of a feather in my cap, that like Michael Quercio thinks that I'm kind of nuts. Yeah.
It's feather in your cap. Chapeau.
Yeah.
So Brad, after joining, it sounds like from our conversation with Michael that you made a pretty big impact on the band, not only with your playing musically, but also in decision making. For example, bringing in Eric Trickett on keys and deciding on the producer, Matt Wignall. Michael said you had a big influence in those two people being part of the project. Did you feel comfortable making decisions as part of the band?
As far as the producer goes, it was kind of like they had label support with Alice that seemed to be a pretty good situation, and it was all a little bit, stuff that I wasn't super familiar with, because I had only met the guy at the label once, or if I even did. Memory doesn't serve me in that regard. But he was sick and they didn't have the deal anymore, and I think, at least the way I remember it, working with that producer, he was a friend of mine that I'd worked closely with on other things, and it was kind of like available, whereas it seemed like Earl Mankey, who they had worked with so often in the past, it didn't seem as though he were available for the current record, and the budgets had changed and stuff. So I don't know how well my memory serves me on the ins and outs of that. And I mean, like, I'll listen to this podcast and hear Michael's interpretation and be like, oh wow, maybe I was like coming on kind of strong. It wasn't my intention.
Oh, no. It just sounded like they incorporated you as one of the band members. That's the impression that I got, and it made it sound like I was hoping that they made you feel comfortable as a member of the band.
Right.
Okay, well, as when you put it that way, I would say Michael was he gave me a lot of freedom, especially as a guitar player. There'd be things that he'd come. Well, actually, no. Now that you mention it, sometimes he would come in and he'd be singing something, and the chording that on his bass, like maybe I would say, what if it went to these chords instead? I think like with another one of my favorite titles of his, "You Are Wise in Your Conceit, O Beautiful Woman of the Tartar." Like,
yeah,
that one, I think I had a lot to do with harmonizing his melody. So it's kind of like still taking his melody, but just like putting maybe different chords behind it, and like the main riff to Damascus Rose was something that I came up with. yeah, most of the time, I mean, it was always, I guess, I just want to stress that it was always Michael's songs, and that was really important. I appreciate when I had a chance to kind of like make a mark on it, but when I look back on it, I think of it as I played in Michael's band, you know. Whereas, I mean, like, I think my impression with Permanent Green Light was that it was more collaborative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that wasn't a frustrating thing at all for me. I was always really proud of how much I was able to contribute. So it wasn't like it wasn't stifling. It was just like the fact that I got to write the riff for Damascus Rose was exciting, you know, and I was proud of what I was able to contribute.
You know, and I want to piggyback on that because something Jeff and I have been really intrigued by, Brad, is that you're credited as playing not only guitar, but also cello, flute, theremin, and synths. How many instruments do you actually play?
Well, looking back on that, I really wish that we had a better cello player. I mean, like, I know how to play cello, but as far as that the record that we did together goes, I'm really proud of a lot of those arrangements. Being able, a lot of the string stuff on there are quartet things, and I don't know, I was like 21 or 22 by that time, and I knew that I was able to do that. A lot of groups that you work with are not ambitious enough to want to make those moves. And Michael, one, just being, you know, musically eccentric and ambitious, then also having influence of like all the field stuff that moves for interesting instrumentation, and I think the first time I ever listened to the Left Bank was through Michael's influence, and I was already a Donovan fan. So when I joined the band, I loved all the music that they loved. I just learned through those guys. I learned so much more of it. That was, you know, like I don't think I had heard Small Faces before, though I had heard Humble Pie. You know, I hadn't listened to. I knew some like T-Rex, but I didn't know Tyrannosaurus Rex. It was that type of thing. So with those arrangements to bring in, well, here's a little just like trivia for the oboe player on that record. I had a friend that played oboe, and I was like, well, I mean, I wouldn't have written for oboe if I didn't know somebody, because we weren't in a position to like just hire a lot of musicians. But I knew an oboe player, so I knew that I could work with that instrument. She's my sister-in-law now. So actually, when she went to the session, she had actually brought her sister, and I met her sister that day, and I married her like 4 years later.
Wow. Wow.
So that's just like that's another fun little Jupiter Effect role in my life.
Yeah, it's a big role.
Doing those arrangements, I was really proud of. But when I listen back to them, it's like, you know, I wasn't a very good cello player, and I wish that I did play the cello. I got a great couple of the violinist I brought in was great, and she's her performance is commanding enough that I hope no one's listening to the cello. But like, it's just little things like that I think that was like a kind of youthful mistake that I look back on with a little regret might be a strong word, but maybe like a lighter form of regret.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah, I mean, like I played flute, I played cello, but it's you know, that doesn't mean that I should have.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think Jeff and I, in our discussions, We absolutely, and I'm so glad you brought it up. We really love the string breakdown on "Do You Remember" before the song comes
Oh,
back,
cool.
and it's really fantastic.
Long ago there were stories told in a world you said was new. You had to try. Do you remember when you had that feeling alone inside your heart?
Just as much as the intro to "The Leader of All Tribes." And so we were just
cool.
curious whether that decision for that instrumentation was exclusively yours, or was it really just something that kind of happened organically, in conversation, or just kind of playing off one another.
It was, I mean, it was stuff that I really wanted to do, and I felt like it was stuff that I was interested in working on arrangements like that anyway. And like I said, in a lot of bands that I played in, there wasn't an opportunity for it. And floating an idea like that to Michael, it was not met with the least resistance. Like, Michael, what do you think if we brought in like a brass ensemble? I mean, basically, like, if we were able to pull it off, Michael was down for just about anything. I know that he wanted like I think it was on Damascus Rose, but it was on one of those songs. He wanted a like army of saxes. I mean, he was just groovy like that. He wanted those interesting elements, and he wanted different textures and stuff. We didn't know a sax player was a problem. At least we could. But you know, there's all the French horn that he. I didn't write that stuff. That he would always bring. He had worked with Ed Keller on French horn for on all kinds of records before that. So I mean, and because and Ed Keller would perform with us too. So the fact that the band had a French horn player, I knew that it was a place that it would be. You know, like that. This was a group that was amenable to those kind of ambitious ideas.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. 100%.
Yeah, and along those lines, Brad, on the song that's titled Song Dynasty Requiem, did you have a part in that piece coming together? It's a great intro to Atop a Gray Sky.
Yeah, thanks. So that's Michael gave me writing credit on I think Damascus Rose and maybe something else on there. But Song Dynasty Requiem is actually just my composition, and that was one moment that I mean, like. I did put that together on my own and submitted it as kind of like a segue type of thing between the two songs. And so yeah, that one's kind of I don't mean this in a self-congratulatory way, because you know I'm sure a lot of people don't even like it, but that was my own thing. And there again, Michael was gracious enough to, he thought it was cool, and he let it be on the record.
When I was listening to it, in my mind, I imagined that was your composition, and it made me think, how did that piece come together? How did you put that together?
Oh man, well, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But the melody on that song is the oboe. So and an oboe kind of has like a snake charmery type of quality to it. So I knew I had access to oboe, and I knew that it would have like a cool, like kind of mysterious kind of quality to it. And in a lot of ways, with the quartet arrangements, there's kind of like a little bit more discipline to the arrangements. Like I kind of followed a little bit of I haven't studied music, but what little things that I know about writing four parts, writing counterpoint, things like that, I employed those to an extent that I thought it was appropriate. So they're kind of like a little bit more by the books, you know. But with the Song Dynasty Requiem, from a composition standpoint, I just kind of wanted to be a little bit more random. Like, it's not really following any compositional techniques at all. It's kind of just like, I wanted it to sound kind of mysterious, so I just kind of did things that I thought would be out of left field, or kind of just melodic things that I wouldn't have normally done that seemed to feel right in that context. And I have to point out the Song Dynasty is the ancient Chinese dynasty that was overthrown by Genghis Khan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really lovely that it happens to be called the Song Dynasty.
Right.
And it fits in really nicely on a kind of like odd melodic rock record. But there is like within the whimsical context of the whole Genghis Khan thing, there was like a little bit of it wasn't random that it was called the Song Dynasty Requiem.
Got it.
At that while I was in the band, like pretty much most of the entire time I was in the band, I was at UCLA studying art history, so my head was like constantly being filled with that kind of trivia. And well, I'm not a museum curator and I'm not an art historian anymore, but I'm still making rock music, and it's kind of fun just to like know little things like that. So like that's basically what I'm doing with my degree.
I like that though, because it adds dimension to the degree. And I'm a fellow UCLA alum, so I'm
Hey,
sure
there you go.
from it. I know that end of campus. So
Cool. There you go.
So Brad, I love the piece, and I love how it leads into Atop a Gray Sky. And at the end of Atop a Gray Sky, you have this dual guitar part going on. Do you remember putting that together with the two guitar parts?
Short answer, absolutely not.
Okay, fair enough.
If I listen to it again, you know what? It did. Wow, it did. We scheduled this interview days ago. It didn't occur to me to like go back and listen to the record, which I probably should have done. A lot of that stuff I could actually like. I could still play a lot of that record for you. But that particular part that you're talking about, if I listened to it, it would come right back to me. But I don't remember off the top of my head. Sorry.
Yeah, it sounds like there's two different parts playing off of each other. They sound like they work together, but they're independent of each other at the same time. They're fabulous parts.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's you know, in a lot of ways, I feel like, I mean, it's been what, 15 years or 10 or 15 years, something like that. And you just grow a lot as a musician. So to hear someone talk about the work from what I feel like when I was a kid, that I do really appreciate that.
It's just impressive to me at 20 years old, some of the arrangements. And you said, well, I haven't studied music, but you have this very, very keen sense of what sounds good where, and the orchestration and the arrangement is just really impressive to hear that you were 20 years old and incorporating all these other elements, and it's really melodic. And one of the things that is just it keeps coming back to me as you speak. It just sounds like this songwriting process and this composition process amongst the band was really collaborative. Am I right in making that judgment there?
In a lot of ways, yeah. But again, in my mind, certainly now, and if I remember correctly back then as well, like it was always Michael's band. And like it was collaborative, kind of like, I mean, he would bring in a song and we would work on it together as a group, and they gave me a really long leash for, oh, you know what else I wrote was the really drumming one. The
Hymn of the Steps.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I didn't write the whole thing, but I like, Chris was playing that drum, and I started playing the riff over it. But then Michael would go home and write a song out of it, you know?
Yeah.
So it would turn it like, and when I say that, I want to be really clear that that's not a complaint at all. Like, it was Michael's band. That's what it was supposed to be. Like, when I joined, I wasn't even the original guitar player. It was Jason Shapiro, you know?
Right.
And he did amazing stuff on Alice. Like I said earlier, I was a fan of the band before joining. So it wasn't like I started a band with Michael. And again, I felt honored that he let me kind of like put my thing in there so much, you know. So yeah, it was collaborative. I would say the collaboration was more in the post-writing stages of stuff, you know, from the arrangement standpoint. I mean, like, no one ever suggested a lyric to Michael, you know.
Right.
And you couldn't, because Michael's, I mean, Cantaloupe Girlfriend, I mean, that has to come from Michael, right?
Yes, yeah. Excellent.
I remember one time he was talking about, well, he had kind of like I don't know how just cheeky he was being about this, because he was cheeky about most things, so I mean, it must have been a lot.
Yeah.
But he was just talking really dismissive about lyrics and just kind of, I don't think that this was his wording, but I would put it as like lyrics are just a vehicle for melody to him. And then he says to me, "You want to know what a cantaloupe girlfriend is? 5 syllables. That's what it is." Which I
nice.
think cantaloupe girlfriend. Yeah, is that anyway?
Nice.
But he told me it was 5 syllables.
I love that insight.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. I mean, it was a blast working with. There's like his brand of sardonism was without peer, and Chris too. Like, I mean, I hung out with Chris more often than I hung out with Michael. We would get together a lot, and Chris just on even outside of music. Just, you know what? Just last night, I was hanging out with my wife. I had the night off, and we were hanging out and talking about everything and stuff going on. And I was like, well, you know, it's like Chris Bruckner used to tell me, and that just like that still comes up regularly. I mean, like this podcast is mostly about the music and everything, as it should be, but like his influence in my life was just I love those guys. So
Wow.
Yeah.
I love hearing that.
Yes.
So Brad, since then you've gone on to do so much stuff and with your session work and production. I wanted to ask, do you have a preference of working in the studio or being on stage or even working in front of a camera? You've done a few TV appearances. Do you have a preference?
All I really, the only thing, I want to be making records more than anything. And I love playing live. And I mean, if anybody saw some of those Jupiter Effect shows at the Bigfoot Lodge, they would think that I really liked playing. Some of those were pretty wild, but yeah, like playing live is a blast, and I certainly enjoy it. You know, it's kind of like more of a like getting your rocks off type of thing. But for me, even back when I was young, even before Jupiter Effect and everything, making records was always the goal. That's just when you get to realize things the most. Even the disappointment of something not going as you would like, that's still, I mean, I love the journey of that. So I mean, yeah, if I could, there's not many musicians that are in a position that they could just have it exactly the way they want, and I'll continue to play live and all that stuff. But like those are gigs, you know. Oh, shit, some records are gigs too, because you're not always working on records that you like.
yeah.
Sometimes they're just keeping the lights on. But even then, like working on a record that is maybe not the most inspiring content, like then I mean, like, oh my gosh, this is my job, making records. Yeah, it's so yeah. That is the preference. And I think that like if I never played live anymore, I would miss it, sure. But if I were never making records anymore, it would be painful.
Very good. Very good. I like that.
And just one last point, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it before we let you go tonight. For our listeners, you know, who probably do know, but it's well worth repeating, we wanted to just kind of bring people up to date about where you've been since Jupiter Affect. We know that you've moved from Los Angeles to Nashville, and you've written quite a few songs for other artists, and you've been involved with music production, session work. You've also toured with different artists like Jamestown Bible, Adam Lambert, Sam Outlet, and LP, even appearing on different television appearances on The Tonight Show, The Late Late Show, and Good Morning America. I mean, among numerous other credits that If we
You guys did your
start
homework.
naming forever. Could you tell or share with our listeners how this transition came about into producing, working with, writing for other artists, and expressing yourself in so many different areas?
Well, life is tricky, we all know. And I think, like, back when I was doing Jupiter Effect and the other bands I was in, I was like, I guess my approach was like, kind of more from the point of view of like, being a guy in the scene, playing in bands, and I would always have a job at the same time and stuff. And also, one thing that like I really cherish about the influence Jupiter Effect has had on me, but even when it sometimes can be a liability, is they really fueled certain aspects of my innate contrarianism. Those guys, they just always wanted to be. I mean, they wanted to make we would play these pop festivals, and Michael just kind of wanted to thumb his nose at the pop scene by making prog rock albums about Genghis Khan and stuff. And I remember him like gleefully telling me about how mad one of his fans was that he had a song in 5/4 time, things like so. That was like a little bit of that was a predisposition of mine anyway. So that's part of why I fit in. And then if you're just going to be on the scene and but you're kind of just trying to thumb your nose at it at the same time, it's a little bit faded. It's not, I was playing in my bands and not doing much else, One of the jobs that I had while I was trying to do music ended unexpectedly, and I had only been married I was still pretty newly married, and my wife told me I was about to get a job at like a screen printing shop or something like that. Geez, it sounds just so it doesn't sound good now to think about it. Like at a merchandising company, different things like that. And my wife told me, you're just going to hate that as much as your last job. Like, you should be doing what you should be doing. And that was really the first time, because I tried to do it myself before, but this one, I had that support, and secondly, I had a responsibility to someone else. So when, a career in music is so deeply frustrating, as even the very successful people know. It's a tough row to hoe, and on my own, like from like 18 to 26 or whatever. No. Well, I was 30 when I started playing full time. So I think like I lost that job when I was 29, and my wife told me to go for it. And really, I mean, that's like I'd say that's kind of late to get started like in a full time capacity. But I was responsible to someone else. So when it got hard, I couldn't just like quit anymore.
Right.
And also because of with that attitude, it was no longer a matter of like I'm going to try to to get my band to break, or we're going to try to do a tour. We're basically if you're going to try to get paid for like being a cool guy. But instead, with this change, it was like, no, this is my job. Like I'm going to do stuff that I don't want to do. I've played a ton of gigs that are mortifying. Which is fine because they're hilarious also, and I'm happy to like. But that's the type of thing that you talk about with your friends in the groups that are fun and cool. But I've had a ton of like terrible gigs, and I've had a ton of things that just didn't work out, and also just like we said, Michael gave me an opportunity to really be a contributing part of that band. But I knew when I started full time that that's not going to happen all the time. Like if I get that, then I'm lucky. But a lot of times I'm just going to be a guitar player, and that's fine. Like I'm not going to get to bring my 2 cents to the table and everything. Like a lot of times I'm just going to have a boss, and that point of view has made me a better musician. It's made me a better person, and I'm thankful for it. And through just working hard, I'm kind of in a place now where I do have more of those opportunities to have a contributing role in the projects that I'm a part of. I love producing artists, and it's in a way, I mean, I wasn't a producer of Jupiter Effect, but similarly, where you just like you're taking someone's song and you're trying to make it the best that it can be. And now as a producer, I get to play that role for people, and it's a real treasure.
Wow, I love that. I love that answer.
And I have to mention this because it's like pretty recent, but the Michael Quercio connection has continued to be a resume boon for me. I belong to this music professional. It's kind of like a LinkedIn for music or something. But I have a page up there, and mostly it just sits dormant. But some guy in New Zealand is a huge 3 O'Clock fan and found me because Michael Quercio is in my bio there. And he hired me to do, I think I did 3 tracks for him, and we're talking about doing one in the coming year. And that was just entirely because Michael Quercio's name is like listed in my bio, and he did a search, and he was a super cool guy, fun, like kind of power pop type of music, like you would expect with the 3 O'Clock kind of influence and stuff. And he found me because of Michael, and that's just like another thing that just makes it so cool to have been a part of that. And I mean, it's been a while since I've kind of connected with that part of my past, so it was great, and I enjoy. And it's also cool. It's from around the world. Like a guy from New Zealand finds me and wants to work with me because I used to play with Michael. And
wow.
I mean, isn't that cool?
That's super cool.
Really?
And that story is a great way.
I haven't had a chance to tell Michael that, but he'll probably listen to this, and so hopefully that'll be a little feather in his cap.
Nice.
Absolutely.
He bought my kids a pair of shoes off of that.
Excellent.
I love that. Brad. And that's a good way to bring it all full circle. I love ending on that story. So, Brad, we did want to thank you so much for taking time to talk about Jupiter Effect, and it sounds like it was a great period of your life. I was fortunate enough to see you guys twice. I saw you at one of those pop festivals, the Fay Dodo show, and apparently your last show. And you're just fabulous to watch you perform on stage. You could just see your energy, at least when you were with the band, and we just really wanted to thank you for taking time to talk to us and all your insight.
I remember the San Diego one well, and that was a special show for me. I thank you for bringing it up, and I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Oh, it was great. Well,
thank you so very much today for your time.
You bet. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Brad. Have a good night.
All right, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Never, ever underestimate the power of the oboe.
Wow.
Never
Wow.
underestimate the power of the oboe.
Wow. That was great listening to Brad talk. He's very well spoken, and you could hear the passion about the band, about the record that he performed on, and being part of Jupiter Effect.
100%. And look, after talking to Michael, to Chris, to Jason, and to Brad, I mean, we definitely have, I think, a better picture of Jupiter Affect, and I just like hearing these stories about the band and how the genesis of these songs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like Brad was a big part of it. And when you hear the music and you just hear those guitar parts, it just sounds incredible. So,
And it's ridiculous that he was 20,
right?
20, thinking of these arrangements and these parts. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
It really is. So this episode has gone on quite a bit. So we've talked to 5 different members from Jupiter Effect, and all have different perspectives. And I've just got to say that this band is incredible. So we talked to Michael, Chris, Dan, Jason, and we just got through talking with Brad. So 3 guitar players, the bass player, the singer, the drummer. Anyway, so it was great.
Groove on, Paisley people. Now you get to say mine.
Gente
Agrupiar.
agrubiar.
Please leave a message for Jason Shapiro.
At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hello, Jason. This is Jeff and Soraya. We're just calling you for the interview for the Jupiter Effect show. So if you get a chance, actually, I'll try calling you again. All right.
Hello?
I think he's trying to call me. Hold on.
Okay, take it.
Hello.
Hello, this is Jeff.
Hey, Jeff. Jason.
Hey, Jason. Is it okay if I call you right back?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll call you right back in 15 seconds.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Hello?
Hello, Jason. It's Jeff and Soraya.
Oh, hold on.
Okay.
I lost you, but hold on.
Okay. Let us know when you're ready.
Okay. Hold on. Hello?
Hello.
Yes.
Hold on, my headphones are still out.
Okay, no problem.
Get us out.
Okay, not a problem. Oh, wait, he's calling me back, Soraya.
Okay, go for it.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We're on.
Okay, I need to call you from my Skype account. Is it okay if I call you right back?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just hang up, call you right back.
Okay.
I didn't even know that he left. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Jason. It's Jeff and Soraya. Can you hear us?
Yeah, it's back to the way it was. Hold on.
Oh, no. Not a problem.
Trying to figure these headphones out.
Each and every high mourns now suicide as the summer wind rolls by. And for your reply, what's here now? but they never do or try. Oh, into the sky. Don't you let that guy take hold of your heart. Take hold of your heart. If on him you burn, you will not return. Take hold of your heart. Take hold of your heart. And for your reward, what's here now is soon ignored as the summer wind rolls by. And for your reply, try a song to suicide. Don't you ever say goodbye. Oh, into the sky. Don't you let that guy take hold of your heart. Take hold of your heart. If for him you burn, you will not return. Take hold of your heart. Take hold of your heart. Each and every high mourns now suicide as the summer wind rolls by. And for your reply, try a song to suicide. Don't you ever say goodbye. Oh, into the sky. Don't you let that guy take hold of your heart. Take hold of your heart. If for him you burn, you will not return. Take hold of your heart. 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 Take hold of your heart.
Here we go. Oh. Oh, wait, he's trying to call me.
Answer.
Should I?
Yeah.
Hey, Brad.
Hello?
Hey,
Hey, Jeff. Did it go straight to voicemail or something? Because I didn't hear it ring.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, here we are. Do you need to get Soraya on
Yes.
now that I'm not in control of?
Yeah, is there any way that we could try calling you right back? Same number?
Yeah, it should be fine. I don't know why it didn't ring the first time.
Okay, we'll call right back in like 20 seconds.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. He even said your name right. That was awesome.
Very good.
Okay, adding him.